remote viewing. Was the Mothman a fear ritual? Centaurs visiting someone in their nightmares. This is Inverted World Live. Well, welcome back. We were visited by some type of apparition once again. Not even kidding. It's not even a bit. Things just go wrong right before we go live. But I'm your host, Shane Cashman. This is Inverted World Live. I'm joined by Alex. What's up?
Hi, Shane. Good to see everybody. I am Alex Ayala. We did have a small haunting. That's why we're a little late today.
This is what you get for saying we had no problems.
I know.
Before.
I think so.
And we've been here for 2 hours preparing. We were ready to go. And then we have a guest tonight who we'll be bringing in a little while. Things just went haywire.
Let's hope we have a guest. Anything can happen at this point.
I'm pretty sure a ghost or something got a hold of your mouse, too. Like it was moving.
The mouse froze right before I was going live. I think we're live. I hope we're live.
Yeah, hopefully we're live. If not, we're just streaming or not streaming at all. But it's good to have everyone back. Thank you guys for all the support that you gave us last week. It's been awesome hearing all of your stories and getting a lot of submissions. So I really appreciate that. A few housekeeping notes before we go forward. I have a dedicated email for story submissions for people who want to call in. That is my name, Shane Cashman at scnr.com. So hit me up there. We have guidelines. You can find them on Twitter. You can find them on the podcast's socials, which is at Inverted Tales. Kind of streamlined it so everyone can send us their stories in succinct ways. It makes it easier for me to reply to everybody. So appreciate that. I was asked by Andrew if we take super chats. That is something we'll be doing if people are that gracious. And if you are, we will read them at the end of every episode. And other than that, we're going to get into our first article, which is funny thinking about what just happened. But we were, so for those of you that know, we are in West Virginia.
Yes.
We broadcast live from an old haunted house in West Virginia. We're surrounded by battlefields, Civil War battlefields, that is. A lot of gnarly, horrible, crazy violence has happened around this area.
I mean, I feel like you can tell just driving through here. If you've never been to West Virginia, trust us.
That's why I moved to West Virginia, ladies and gentlemen. So I saw these articles.
Wait, it's why I won't move to West Virginia, everybody.
We're going to convince Alex and her family to move to West Virginia because the ghost population is obviously soaring. Ghost tourism is on the rise. And these two articles came out in the past few days. I was like, we got to do it because we're in West Virginia. So yeah, West Virginia ranks #1 for paranormal investigations. So this is funny to me, first of all, that I think both articles are written by people in West Virginia. So it's West Virginia claiming that West Virginia is the most haunted. So take it with a grain of salt.
They just want to bring people into this.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? We gotta spike tourism. You know, the economy is bad. We need people to come here and investigate our ghosts, our cryptids, our UFOs. But here we go. In this first article, one of many topics that can be associated with the Mountain State is ghosts, cryptids, and a variety of the paranormal. According to a study held by Jeff Bett, paranormal investigations are most common in West Virginia, and many keywords related to the paranormal, such as ghost orb, were studied to discover what states were most interested in paranormal investigations. West Virginia took the top spot with an average of 403 searches per 100,000 people each month, which is 67% higher than the national average of 241 searches per 100,000 residents. So I won't go into the whole thing, but this article basically says that people are searching for the paranormal in West Virginia more than most places, which honestly, this is a pretty, I think West Virginia is rather haunted. I think there's a lot of weird stuff that goes on here. A lot of very old towns. The oldest town in West Virginia is somewhat nearby. Like I said, battlefields are nearby. One in particular is Antietam Battlefield, which tens of thousands of men died on that field. And when you walk that field, you know, you can either think that it's haunted or that you are projecting onto it whatever knowledge of violence you know happened there many years prior. It's bad. And then also, how could I forget John Brown and the raid in Harper's Ferry where men died? And then, as we'll get into, like the title suggests, the Mothman. But can we flip to the other article real quick before we get into... this is also came out. Everyone, I hope you're looking at this. If you're not looking at this, if you're listening to it on Spotify or Apple, on the side of this article is an ad for Greenbrier Valley. Why is that funny? It's funny because that is basically a doomsday bunker at the bottom of this state in West Virginia. It's owned by Jim Justice, the governor. It's got a nuclear fallout shelter beneath it. It's also known for having ghosts. Now, I didn't do my ghost research on the Greenbrier today, but I do know some of it. I think there was a woman named, I want to say Zora, who died in that area and haunted this facility, Greenbrier. So I just think it's hilarious that there's this ad for the Greenbrier on West Virginia is ground zero for UFO research and extraterrestrial encounters, as the other article is stating that there is a spike in paranormal investigations in the state.
Life has a reset button. Okay?
I think this is a Scooby-Doo situation where it's like Jim Justice is walking around dressed as a monster, and at the end, Alex and I will rip the mask off and be like, it's Jim Justice the whole time, because he wants tourism to spike. Obviously, he's got the Greenbrier Estates. And also, before I get into this article, how hilarious is the top of this ad? If you can't see it, it says life has a reset button. Sounds suspiciously like the afterlife to me. I don't know what's going on down there, Jim Justice, but we will look into it at some point. Anyway, as this article states, West Virginia is ground zero for UFO research and extraterrestrial encounters.
I wonder if it's haunted.
Greenbrier?
Yeah.
I think there's something going on down there. Can we scroll down a little bit on this article? A renowned paranormal investigator says West Virginia has a remarkable association with UFO activity because of its role in the search for extraterrestrial life and because it was the location of many early alleged UFO encounters. Dave Spinks, perhaps best known for his appearances on the Travel Channel and the History Channel, and Destination America, says you can't beat the Mountain State when it comes to UFO lore. Again, this just sounds like tourism, but something is afoot. Something is going on in this state, because we do have the Mothman in this state. We do have the Flatlands monster, which took place, I believe, about 10 years prior. So
I don't know about the Mothman.
So we won't go into great detail, but I brought all this up because the West Virginia hauntings and the sightings, and I do believe there's something like a thinning of the veil in the state, perhaps because the amount of battlefields here, perhaps because our proximity to Washington, D.C., which is the biggest haunted house of them all. Something's up here. I sit next to a gravedigger at church every Sunday, and I do. He's a great man, and I've actually helped him dig graves, and he tells me about finding mass graves of limbs in the area because they were taken off on the battlefield during the Civil War, because Antietam's so close. There's towns nearby that they were turned into hospitals. Every building was a hospital to take care of the wounded and the dying in the war, in the battle in Antietam. So that goes into place. But the Flatlands monster, to sum it up quickly, is, people saw a streak across the sky. There were supposedly a sheriff investigating what they thought was some type of crash, perhaps a UFO, perhaps a plane. The story kind of differs depending on who you talk to and what you read. But people claim to see some type of tall creature with red glowing eyes. Other people might call it the Phantom of the Flatlands, which
that could just be what people in West Virginia like.
Hey, now.
Sorry, no offense.
I love this state.
Besides the haunted house we're in, though, have you experienced anything for yourself?
No, other than this house, I haven't experienced anything yet. And I visit a lot of weird places in this area. But I think the knowledge of things like the Mothman permeate the culture of the state. Okay. And anytime I talk to anyone who knows anything about paranormal stuff, they immediately want to talk about Mothman, which happened in Point Pleasant. So the reason I was in the title, we were saying it might be a fear ritual, is I've been thinking a lot about the story of Mothman, and basically, so you don't know the story at all?
I don't know. I don't think so.
It's a lot like Flatlands.
Okay.
People saw a cryptid type creature, winged, glowing eyes, in, I can't remember the year right now, but it was, I think it was November of, I want to say 62 or 66 perhaps. And then that news broke of the sighting, and then everyone started seeing it, and then people were reporting on having premonitions of like doom, right? So this town is being inundated with these really negative feelings. People are seeing it. There's people who are claiming to see the Mothman, who supposedly never heard the other encounters with the Mothman, which could lend credence to the story, or who knows, someone inserted them into the story. After a few weeks of the Mothman sightings, men in black started showing up in this little town. And that really caused a stir because people were already freaked out about this winged beast.
Okay.
I mean, it was everyone's writing about it. There's broadcasts, there's author writing a book about it. So it induced this fear in this town. And then a month later, a bridge collapsed during commuting hours, and like 46 people died. It's terrible. And it was December, I want to say like 16th, somewhere close to Christmas time. People claim to have seen the Mothman on the bridge, and the man who wrote Mothman Prophecies says that people who claim to have seen the Mothman also perished in that bridge collapse. It's a crazy story.
Yeah.
The reason I've been thinking about this a lot in terms of like a fear ritual, which in my mind is like a deception campaign where things are created to scare people and induce this like psychic trauma on a population. A few things made me think of that, and that is semi-recently there's a story about people seeing aliens in Peru, and it turned out they were miners in jetpacks. I haven't seen video or pictures of what miner, and M-I-N-E-R, not M-I-N-O-R, miners in jetpacks. Just want to make sure that people know. Image. That's what they thought the aliens were. And then so thinking about that story, then thinking about things that were happening in the years leading up to and then after the Mothman sightings, our government was experimenting with parapsychology. They were doing remote viewing a few years after the Mothman sightings in Fort Meade, which is only 2 hours away in Maryland from Point Pleasant. So that's where Operation Stargate was happening. That's where they were remote viewing, trying to see things, without being there. Interesting to me that people were already in our government were working on these parapsychology experiments, and knowing what happens when people might be scared by something and how they like to experiment, and what happens if we just drop the idea of a monster into the situation and watch the town go wild. Or perhaps someone did see a Mothman and then people stepped in saying we want to take advantage of the situation and experiment. I'm just saying this is speculation, but it kind of adds up with me and my train of thought when I think of the sightings in Peru and the miners on jetpacks and how a town thought they were being attacked by aliens. Also, fits of hysteria break out through communities. You can go look up laughing hysterias, where entire schools start laughing or dancing for no reason, and it's almost like a contagion that spreads through a community. Obviously, we've seen fear spread, especially in the last few years, as these fear rituals accelerate. So I think there's something to just think about when you think about being scared by monsters. And I also don't want to diminish monsters, because the older I get, the more I believe in monsters.
Are they under your bed, Shane?
They're everywhere, Alex. They're literally everywhere. Monsters are real, and I'm talking about the kind that look like you and me, that operate in the shadows. And I'm talking like the kind that might be winged beasts terrorizing areas. So I don't want to say all this, that the government is using these fear rituals and deception campaigns to experiment on what they could do to the human brain by injecting a monster into a scenario. So I think that's also a reality. And when I talk about deception campaigns, I think of the ghost, literally they called it the ghost army.
Yeah.
Right? In World War II, we created a ghost army, a fake army to scare our enemy, inflatable tanks, and we used weird sounds to make it sound like we were at war to throw off the enemy. It's something we do. And obviously that predates Mothman and all this stuff. So just something I want everyone to keep in mind as the fear spreads in our society, and will only get crazier in the next however many years, because the monsters are there. The monsters are real, Alex. You know, how are you on? You don't believe in monsters? What do you think? What do you tell your kids?
Oh, I believe in
do your
monsters.
Do your kids believe in monsters? Like, do you talk about it?
Well, of course. So, I mean, even last night, my son, he woke up this morning. He was like, "Mommy, there was monsters." I'm like, "There's no monsters. There's no monsters here." And he was like, "There." I was like, "Where were they?" He said, "In the curtain." I said, "In the curtain." I said, "What do they look like?" He said, "Hulk." And I said, "Okay."
All right. Well,
I have too much Spider-Man, I suppose. But like he described Hulk not in the way the Hulk looks like, and I was just like, okay, you know. And you have to like talk him out of like you know, believe in monsters. I'm not gonna be like, yes, there are monsters out there.
It's a tough thing to walk when you're talking to your kids about monsters, because I want them to know that there are bad people in the world that are monsters. I also want them to
sleep. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. What's more important though, Alex? So, do you want to sleep? But yeah, it's crazy. All the weird things that happen in West Virginia or on the borders of West Virginia. Before we move into our guests, there's just Mount Weather is nearby. That's an underground bunker where they will move all the politicians, like in DC, should something happen. You know, that news of that only really broke, I believe, when a plane crashed into that mountain. And they're like, "Oh yeah, by the way, this mountain is an underground bunker."
Well, they're very important people, Shane. So
yeah, why are we building bunker for these people, these worthless people? And then, like I said, Greenbrier is south, much south of here. It's a wonderful place, but I love seeing these articles that are talking about West Virginia is the most haunted, written by West Virginians. I love it. I'm proud of it. And I
know y'all come to West Virginia, check it out. Let us know what you think.
But yeah, I want everyone to just be very suspicious of when the monsters are taking over the headlines. There are real ones, but there's also ones that they create to deceive you. So my next guest, I want to introduce this guy.
Sure.
He's a really good friend of mine. I just want to tell a small story about him real quick. We're talking about weird things, right? This is a weird one. So before I knew this person, my good friend Mike Manhop sent me this album, and I immediately liked it. It wasn't something I typically listened to, as at the time I was listening to mostly like metal, like hardcore and rap. And this was a haunting kind of folk guy, and I immediately liked it. And there was a song I liked in particular called "My Girl the Horse." And I grew up on a farm, kind of partial to horse things for whatever reason. And when I got that record, I spun that song in particular quite a bit. And at the time, this is many years ago, it was probably like 15, 14 years ago, I'm playing it. I'm at the farm that my parents live at. And an old soldier, comes to the farm, and he asked my parents if he could ride a horse up to the top of the hill in his old uniform for a photo shoot. My parents obliged. He rides Taco up the hill. Taco is a horse we used to have. At one point, he kicked me in the chest when I was a little boy. I had a hoof print on my chest for 6 or so weeks. Anyway, this old man is in his uniform, and he rides Taco to the top of the hill. I'm walking around the farm listening to "My Girl the Horse," a song I just found out and I love a lot. The first line of that song is, "Please, sir, don't you ride on me." And then later on in the song, it says something. I'm paraphrasing now because I want to get it right, but neither of us will make it down this hill alive. Now, Taco, for whatever reason, died beneath this man at the top of this hill. And it was quite shocking that I had been listening to a song about a horse dying on a hill that whole week. So Taco died. The man's okay.
Okay.
He's probably bruised emotionally. But that to me is a weird synchronicity that would then later on begin a friendship with this next guest, where we have lots of synchronicities. Super talented guy. He's one of my favorite musicians. You might have seen him on Good Morning America. He's collaborated with Bonnie Prince Billy. You can find him on Instagram. He's got books. He's got his new album, Bright Soil. His name is Christopher Mansfield, and he is of the band Fences. And let's bring him on.
Hey, how's it going? Can you hear us, Christopher? Chris?
I can hear you great.
Oh, dude.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. I just kept thinking something, Almost Heaven, West Virginia. What's Almost Heaven? That sounds like the Bardo or the waiting room, or where a ghost is not there. Yeah, they didn't go to heaven. So it's almost like they gave us a clue with their little song and their catchphrase. I actually have a T-shirt that says "Almost Heaven, West Virginia," and now I'm never going to wear it again.
It's haunted. Did you hear the story about the song you wrote, "My Girl the Horse," and how I think it killed my horse?
Yeah, I was gonna apologize for taco. Because I'm I was actually ironically talking to someone the other day about how I didn't really like tacos, like the real ones. Like I like Taco Bell or Taco
Right,
Time. Like I
right.
like very like Caucasian tacos. Like I can't do the double like with the lengua and all that. So it might have just been my vendetta against the food, and then it like psychically accidentally killed your horse named Taco. So I'm sorry.
It's all right. He was old. It was his time to go. And, it's all right. But I think about that a lot when I think about you and your music. And that makes me think about another artist I love, Brian Wilson, of the
Uh-huh.
Beach Boys, for those who don't know. You know that
Yeah.
story where he's in the studio recording his album Smile. He's doing the song Mrs. O'Leary's Cow, which is about the Chicago fire. And he's
Right.
bugged out in the studio. He's got a fire hat on. They made a fire in the studio. And essentially, writing this song and recording, I think, kind of made him go a little crazy because he heard that just down the block, a building burnt down. And then he started hearing about
Hmm.
other buildings, and he associated every fire happening with this thing that he opened up with this dark.
Yeah.
It's a very unhinged song for those listening to it. It's an instrumental, but it's crazy. What do you think's going on there with music? Does music have a power to do this?
To kill
Yeah,
horses.
Yeah.
I think that um I I was recently in New York, and there was this man I met named Joe who like invented a bunch of BMX tricks when he was young, and he was talking about like he's like it wasn't me doing it, and he was like it was this like this alchemy, like you become like a
Hmm.
wizard, and he's like I want to know how to play guitar, and I showed him like like the don't chicka don't. I showed him like the Johnny Cash strum, and he called me like 2 months later, and he's like, I got it. My wife won't stop crying, and I'm like, oh no, like you tapped in. Like there
Right.
is this weird, if you're getting information from a place that's not really yours, like God, I guess,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, it's kind of a great responsibility, and I think it can like almost it's like like a guitar can be like a Ouija board,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So you have to be
Wow.
careful. You're playing with these things, and it can go good or go bad. Like you're accidentally like, oh, I sang something about someone, and um, it's almost like love potion number nine. I mean, you can
Hmm.
make someone fall in love with you, then you can have a child, then the child will get old and the child will die, or maybe someone wrote maybe Charles Manson's father wrote Charles Manson's mother a love song, and they made Charles Manson.
Mm.
So
Right.
there's a great power with music, because I mean, it's like, I mean, think about like marches, like military marches and like the national anthem. Like music has the ability to heal the world or manipulate the world. So
That's a
it's
great
like a
point.
great responsibility.
It's
Yeah.
funny you say that because Brian Wilson recorded or released Good Vibrations about a month before the Mrs. O'Leary's Cow was recorded. And Good Vibrations he
Mhm.
wrote because he asked his mom when he was younger, why are dogs barking at that person? And she said, the dogs are picking up on the bad vibrations of that person. So it's like
Oh,
Good
he was
Vibrations.
trying to fix it.
Yeah, yeah, he kind of balanced it out because Good Vibrations has that very like transcends. It's got such a high.
Hmm.
People think of it as Good Vibrations, and it's happy go lucky. But if you actually listen to Good Vibrations to how he wrote it at the end of Smile, it goes from Mrs. O'Leary's Cow to Blue Hawaii, and then segues into Good Vibrations, which is one of the most haunting segues I think in music history. It's very bizarre, but that's obviously not how it was recorded or released because the record label wasn't so happy with Smile. But I love that
Well,
stuff.
I think what was so like kind of incredible about Brian is that he seemed to sort of hide the alchemy behind like major chords and pop melodies and stuff like that,
Hmm.
which is a very, very cool idea, because if someone just comes out and they're like, I'm just saying evil things, and it's like, like when I listen to like I don't know, like Burzum or like Dark Throne or like black metal,
Uh-huh.
I'm like, I like it kind of. It sounds kind of fun, but I'm like, I don't buy it. But
Right.
then when you hear this kind of happy song, but behind that you're like, oh, it's like they're trying to say something with like a mask on. It's like they're in a costume, and it's kind of,
Ooh.
it's like they're undercover, you know what I'm saying?
Yes,
And it's
that's
more
so
effective.
good. Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of people think of the Beach Boys as this happy-go-lucky thing. You know, the California girls,
Yeah.
Surfing USA. They're underneath, below the surface of the Beach Boys is just haunting. I mean, they were. Dennis was, I think it was Dennis, friends with Charles Manson. You know,
Yeah,
they were
exactly.
in that world.
Well, I think, I mean, you had told me once, there was a part of a Beach Boys song that you cried every time, and now I do as well.
Really?
And it's just when he says, you know, surfs up on a tidal wave, and I think of kind of like this, you know, but like it's like sarcastic, like surfs up, like, you know,
Right.
but it's like it's like yeah, like life is really scary, surfs up. It's like,
I
Right.
don't think I can listen to
yeah,
the
I'm
Beach
good.
Boys the same way
Oh,
anymore.
I hope everyone has a different view of the Beach Boys
Oh,
now, because
man.
they're so, I think they're underrated. As popular as they are,
Yeah.
no one's interpreting them as this kind of very haunting soundtrack to the fall of America during the 60s. You know, we're going to be happy and we're the best at it. And Brian Wilson is a madman, genius, who's seeing all these vocal melodies. He thinks he's actually receiving God's voice through him, is what he said. Music is God's voice, and you know that's what all the harmonies are. But that's why I include them in a paranormal podcast, because to me they are the soundtrack to paranoia and paranormal, and but it's masked by this lovely melody, all these lovely melodies.
Masked by normal.
Right,
You know?
right. Which,
Yeah,
you know, and that's
I agree with you. I can't. Yeah, the smile demos. I can't do it. Like if I have to like really choose the times I can listen to it, because it makes me kind of go crazy. And I've sat with many women showing that to them, and I'll go on some rant, and they're like, I don't hear it. I'm like, listen harder, like, you know, and they're just thinking,
Yeah.
you know, you need your Wellbutrin to, you know.
So I want to move on in a minute, but I should say real quick before we move on, I want to talk about Joshua Tree and your own paranormal encounters, if you have any. But
Sure.
yeah, so Smile, Christopher is referencing the Smile sessions, and you can actually, if you're listening to that you're hearing a man lose his mind. There's sessions in that where Brian Wilson is pretending he's trapped inside of a piano. He actually, in fact, does lose his mind, according to his physician, or I'll call him his handler. His handler takes over Brian's whole life. Brian gets addicted to like drugs, lots of weird drugs that are trying to heal him. His therapist is trying to now write his lyrics, and Brian loses it, and you're listening to a man snap. And then the Smile sessions, the record label, when Brian brought it to them, they were like, this is insane. We don't want anything. We're going to take apart this masterpiece, I think is a masterpiece, and we're going to release it in the way we think it seems fit, because it bugs people out. But it's the most bugged out record. I think it's, to me, it's almost tied with Pet Sounds, which he wrote right before this. And then the other thing I want to say real quick, we were talking about last night, I decided to reach out to Carol Kay about Mrs. O'Leary's Cow. She's the bass player on my favorite song of all time, which is God Only Knows. Both my children were born to that song. My wife walked down the aisle to that song. It's the most beautiful song. She's on Mrs. O'Leary's Cow. She's on lots of Beach Boys songs. She was part of the Wrecking Crew. Somehow this 90-year-old lady reached back out to me. My question was, hey, do you think Brian Wilson started fires with his song? Didn't think she'd reach out. She did. She's like the straight man to me. She was like, those guys were just crazy. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. They were wearing fire hats and starting fires. She's like, I just played bass. You know, she's like, I don't think fires were started by Brian.
Okay, that's wicked hot though.
Yeah,
dude,
dude, look her up. She is wicked cool. I know, you know, Christopher knows about Carol Kay, and like, she's just one of the most, you know, so
great.
talented.
I mean, she's one of those women where like, you don't even know how many things she's played on, you know, like pretty much every iconic song, you'll hear this perfect bass line, and it's just this cool lady. And she used to wear those like cat glasses, like the 60s glasses that kind of like shape, and you know, she have a dress on. She's in there with a bunch of men, just like killing
looks cool, sounds
amazing.
cool. And she didn't get back to me about this, but this is another weird thing. If you Google her name, some of our eagle-eyed observers and watchers of the show caught this before I did. If you Google her name, it says that she died and was born on the same day. So that says she is actually 0 years old. And I emailed her, I was like, for clarification. She's probably like, this is bad voodoo. I'm not getting involved in that situation. Stop emailing me about Brian Wilson's fires, paranoia, and why I'm 0. Okay. But Christopher, have you had encounters with the strange and unexplained?
Yeah, I mean, do you want me to start from the beginning or current?
let's hear some. Yeah,
From the day you were
can start wherever you want. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I was first
my
of all,
birthday.
Born. That's
It is.
Your parents were listening to a haunting song.
I like that some of Shane's 2 favorite songs have to do with like a cow and a horse. It's all like like a farm music thing. I really like that. I'm gonna write you a song about a pig next, I think.
Please.
I remember my stepfather Wayne, his mother May. I just called her Grandma May. I didn't really know her well. She was kind of cranky, like she was. When people get old, they just hate everything. Like a car drives by going like 15, and they're like, no,
I'm like that now.
But she had this. Yeah, honestly, I'm getting there, But she had this boyfriend named Grant who really liked me a lot. And, he would play Scrabble with me and stuff like that. And there was one night I was in my bed and I'm dreaming, and he came to my window and knocked on it, kind of like a vampire or something. Whoa. And I opened my window and he took my hand and he like flew me over this like cow pasture. Shane, you'll love that. And then we land and we're trying to like kind of traverse this really thick mud. He's like, we gotta go. It's a dream. And I woke up, my mother woke me up, and she's like, hey buddy, like Grant died last night. And I was like, oh, he came to, I don't know, was he trying to bring me with him, or you know what I mean? But that like blew my mind. And that was my first one. I was probably like 11.
Wow.
And I've always, because I mean, maybe coincidence, but it was like a very weird dream, because I can remember feeling the feeling of pulling my legs up out of the mud, and it was weird. And
sounds like a metaphor. It sounds like a metaphor for something, like you're trudging through the mud.
Yeah.
It's like you're almost
heaven, baby.
Yeah, right. Almost heaven. It's the waiting room for the afterlife for sure. It's like the very beginning of Dante's Inferno. It's where Dante awaits Virgil, is almost heaven. West Virginia is the new very beginning of the Divine Comedy. But your dream sounds like, I mean, he possibly was like saying goodbye. You had a nice relationship with them, and it's like a goodbye. Mm-hmm. Or maybe you were tapped in. Someone else might argue that you're some type of psychic abilities, and you were tapped into that part of the universe, alerting you to this man passing away.
Right. Yeah. Which is, I mean, when you admit to those things, people think that you're like delusional or you have a weird ego or something. But yeah, I had a lot. I was kind of a strange child. I mean, my name is Christopher, and I would sign my name at all my papers in school Christ, because I couldn't go past it, because I just learned to write because I was like 1 or something. Right. And the teachers thought I had some kind of God complex, and I'm like, no, my grandma said that I see like a lady in a blue dress floating above my bed when I wake up. Like, I just was all over the place with that type of stuff as a kid. But I think that's a lot of children. I think they forget. I think you hit like puberty and you're like, you want to just think about, Nirvana and like some girl named Melissa. Like, you forget that you literally see ghosts and you can like time travel and things like this.
We're just too young to make sense.
So yeah, that was, exactly. And at the end of the day, I mean, possibly that's just, maybe we need to realize that childlike imagination could be sort of synonymous with psychic ability.
I think so. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I think raw life is absurd, but then the material world puts it in a box. Like reality all of a sudden exists in a cubicle, and now because you're living your day-to-day life, you're getting older, you have material objects to worry about, and you forget about all the weird supernatural things that were affecting you as a child, perhaps. And kids seem more tuned into it because there's an innocence there before the material world starts to crush them. When you experience a dream like that when you're 11, is that something you forget and move on, or is that something that kind of like stays with you, haunts you, or changes the way you view life?
It's something I think more about now, more in like almost like a sentimental way, or like a self-reflection. Because everyone around me was kind of like, oh, no, 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 they didn't like, they were like, don't, they were like, they didn't want to, like, I don't know, like, what would be the word? They
Confront
they
it?
didn't want me to, like, think about it. Yeah, they were like,
Right.
no, have some cereal, like, let's move on, like, watch Power Rangers. I was like, okay, I'm sorry, I'm
Right.
sorry. But I think there was one time I think it was the first time I did psychedelic mushrooms, and I ate like a heroic dose, like a Terrence McKenna level dose, and I shouldn't have. I was like
Right.
probably 15 years old or something.
Right.
And I went out with my friend Johnny Meyer, and we were like so high where it's like, I remember I tried to put a physical Bible into a cassette player,
Yep.
like
You're
I
so
couldn't.
far gone. Yeah.
I was so far gone. But I saw a baby and it was crying.
Huh.
And I looked at the baby and I started crying. And I was like, I looked at him, I go, the baby knows what we know right now. I was like, because imagine being an infant, you're like looking around, you're just crying, I was like, babies are like on the psychedelic trip, like as you said, until things start to build, like clothing, houses, television, cars, jobs, like friendships. Babies are just, I felt at that moment, I was like, I almost felt bad even with my own daughter. Sometimes I look at her and I'm like, she will, like, she'll go by like a tree branch and be like, whoa. I'm like, yeah, she's like tripping. She's
Yeah.
like not
Everything's
here
amazing.
yet. Like she's
Everything's
still like in
amazing.
this, yeah,
Yeah.
everything. And that's like, but there was a weird moment in that trip, and maybe it was a bad trip where I was like, is that like beautiful and like a discovery sense, or is it scary? Because they
Right.
cry, it's like I remember like dropping like I'm gonna make like a Caesar salad, and I drop a silver bowl on like a concrete ground and it dings and she starts sobbing.
Right.
It's like, I don't want
Yeah.
to feel like that. Like a
Right.
noise makes me cry. I mean, that
You're
sounds kind of,
Because I think, like when you take hallucinogenics and when you're an infant, you become hypersensitive to your surroundings, and that veil disappears,
right.
and all of a sudden you are like
Yeah.
an exposed nerve to all of the absurdities of actual reality. And it's kind of like,
Right.
I dabbled in a lot of that stuff a long time ago, and I knew I had to stop because I was becoming too paranoid. Because when you go through that portal that those hallucinogens bring you, I was becoming like, I can't, this is too much to handle, I can't take this much more. This is like, I knew people who lost their minds legitimately, had to go away for doing it too often. And I was like, I don't want to be locked away, like spiritually, and physically, right? Because they never got back.
No,
Whatever key that drug gave them to go to that other world, that key didn't work when they wanted to come back. And I was too afraid. I was like, I don't want
wait, let me back in. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
sorry, no, we're closed. Reality's closed for business. You're here now.
Right. It's like going to the
outside of
lodge.
7-Eleven, that's locked.
It's the
Yeah,
lodge in Twin
it
Peaks.
can be dangerous. Exactly. Yeah, that is not. It can be pretty dangerous. And I had some friends who I knew this kid, Jeremy. I won't say his last name, but he did so much LSD when I was in eighth grade that he lived in his parents' backyard. Like he
Wow.
couldn't be in a house
Right.
anymore. He's like, I
Right.
can't be in buildings. He just slept like in the grass, and I'd still go visit him. And he said there's a school bus in his yard that Mickey Mouse lived in. And I'm like, dude, there's not a school bus
Right.
in your yard,
Right.
And it was, those acid casualties are crazy. And Yeah, it's really sad. So yeah, I
So
don't.
good. That's a good name for like a straight edge punk band, Acid Casualties. And I'm going to say real quick,
It
I
is,
don't
yeah.
do drugs, kids. You know,
Yeah, don't.
I think it's just not worth it. It opens you up to a lot of bad stuff, and there's also like a lot of terrible things out there these days that I actually think invite terrible, evil demons into your body.
Yeah.
I've had the pleasure of traveling this country a lot the past few years, and a lot of these cities are overrun by people taking weird, crazy chemicals that have turned them
Yeah.
into like twisted, humans, and it's very, very sad. And it's everywhere. It's like every place I go.
Yeah, there's cities I won't even live in anymore because of the drugs.
Right.
Like
Yep.
I don't want to go to San Francisco, Portland,
Yeah.
Seattle. It's
West
like
Virginia.
Yeah.
it
You can
looks
come to West
like The
Virginia.
Walking Dead, you know. Yeah,
Come to West
are
Virginia. We
are they
have
doing
the
that?
real Walking Dead here. No, there's unfortunately a lot of grief and
Yeah.
drug use here as well. It's just unfortunately it's everywhere. But we got to get to callers soon. But you said you're in Joshua Tree.
Doing some hallucinations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, are you seeing anything weird out there? Joshua Tree is known for
Very
some interesting
bizarre.
situations. How
I
so?
have. I see something weird probably every night, like, and I'm not kidding. And my buddy Adriel, who is at the house I'm at, because I'm here like doing music stuff. I tell him that I run in, I'm like, dude, like, I'm like, the moon literally disappeared. And we go look for the moon, and the moon is gone, and there's no clouds, but it was there, it was huge, and it's orange, and then it's gone. And I tried to Google it, and there was like a weird Reddit thread, like, why did the moon disappear? And he's just like, the desert will just show you what it needs to show you, and because he's like
Oh,
from here.
God.
It's like a Simpsons episode.
Right.
Pretty much. And right this way where I'm pointing, there's a military base, which is, of course, and you will see. I've seen helicopters that like are the size of like the Titanic and loud, and there's like five of them like going over
Interesting.
during the day, and then at night I see like orbs just spinning this, just above the military base, and then they just vanish. And I'm
Really?
like, yeah, I've like, yeah, on God, like
What
I
do you make
see
of
it.
that? What do you make of that? Do you think that's extraterrestrial? Do you think that's demons? Do you think that's the military?
Well, that's what's hard to say is because you kind of get against a wall because if it is by military bases, which usually it is, then you go, it's either, you know, interdimensional spirits making sure we got everything in check and we're not going too far, like with like nuclear technology and they're like just babysitters,
Right.
or it's us and it's
Right.
stuff that they don't show us. And if anyone knows, it's definitely not me, but I just the reason that I didn't feel that it was government technology is because it seemed um playful and kind of pointless. Like it didn't seem like they were running a drill of like their new drone system. It was like like a light show, like a
Right.
dance. And
Right.
and I don't think that the government or the military, they don't seem very playful.
I like that interpretation.
You know?
I sometimes think maybe
Yeah.
it's like some guy who's like, "Hey, boss, I'm gonna take it out for a joyride real quick." He's like, "All right, Carl, take it out, but don't have too much fun, okay?"
Maybe, yeah. Carl's just in there like, whoa.
Whoa, doing
just, like,
cartwheels in like that new
hear the Beach
sweet.
Boys playing
Yeah,
in
he's
the back.
listening to the Beach Boys, just
Wow.
spinning out of control. But they do happen. I mean, it's funny because
it's actually Shane. It's actually him.
it's funny though because the Mothman was also seen at a
Call
munitions
himself out.
depot. Wait, what was that?
Mhm.
Sorry,
The Mothman?
Yeah, the Mothman was seen at a munitions depot. So it's like a lot of these things do happen around military places or military adjacent
Yeah.
places, which is,
Well, when you were talking about that, it was interesting.
Uh-oh. We're losing you, Christopher.
Christopher, we
We're
might have
losing
lost you.
Rereading. What's up? Am
We
I
lost
there
you for
now?
a second. Yeah, you're here.
I'm back. I was recently rereading It by Stephen King, and and in the beginning of the book, they like kill a boy and then they see a clown.
Right.
So I'm like, whenever something evil happens, this thing appears, and the way that King sort of made it feel to me is that it was like it was a mirror. It's a mirror of ourself. Like it's something showing us what we are. So it's not even like maybe like the Mothman didn't take down the bridge. Like maybe we did. Like our collective consciousness or something, and that was just a manifestation of our own evil, you know?
Yeah, dude, I think you're onto something. That's kind of, I think, where I was going, you know, with the idea of these fear rituals where perhaps because of we know we did things like remote viewing, even 2 hours away later on in Fort Meade, perhaps they induce these fear rituals for us to psychically create the doom that we're feeling in that place, right? And people can create their own doom. You know, you can find yourself in a doom pattern and not find a way out because your brain just keeps you locked on that doom cycle, and it's terrible.
Well, absolutely. And I think a lot of those archetypes, that's all in the Bible anyways, you know? It's like it's kind of, it's almost like it's showing what God gave us as free will and how we blew it, you know? So it's like, yeah, you know, this is all love and I made you in my image and we love you. But when the evil happens, it's like, here's a mirror. That's why when Jesus said he was the snake on the cross and he's like, but like, I'm like the mirror. So like the crucifixion, it's like, you did this.
Right.
Like you have to see what you did to me, you know? And so when you see the Mothman or a clown,
right,
you know, that's why King is genius, but it's basically, every story is basically a story from the Bible anyways, you know?
Everything. I mean, what you were just saying reminds me of today's sermon in church was about the third, fourth, and fifth plagues and how the Pharaoh saw horrible things happening. He saw gnats rise from the dust when Aaron hit his staff against it. He saw all the livestock, all the cattle die everywhere except for the one place in, I think, Goshen, in the town of Goshen where the Israelites were, and you know, and the flies. And even though you're seeing what seems to be straight up, you know, I don't want to say it's evil, but to you, it's like affliction, you know, it's like, because it's God doing it and he's afflicting you. And Pharaoh's heart is still hardened. You know, he doesn't soften his heart at all because he's like, you know, I'm a God. You know, Pharaoh's saying, I'm a God. Like, nothing your God can do will soften my heart. But that's kind of like what a lot of people go through in life when they're faced with such evil. You either have to accept that that's a reality and move forward with that information, or you reject it and you accept the cubicle reality where everything is just, you know, your bills, the day-to-day routine where the supernatural stuff falls to the side. And it's an easier life. I prefer not to live that life.
Yeah, I like to go into the dark places, you know. There's a girl that's also at this house named Jessie, and I was sleeping in a room near her, and I popped up in the middle of the night, and I had like a sleep paralysis, like, you know what I mean? And I thought that I was spitting blood out of my mouth and out of my nose, and I jumped up and I was like, oh, like I thought I was catching, and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she said that when I looked at her, that like my eyes were like different, and then I just went back to bed.
The lizard
and a bunch of people in this house have been pretty much. She said that my eyes looked not like completely blacked out, but she was like they weren't green because I have green eyes, you know. And she was like they were like this weird thing, and I didn't remember. And there was another one where she said that I woke up screaming, "There's 18 people in here." I was like, what does that mean? I was so creeped out. But a lot of people in this house have been like being kind of weird.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, dude, don't go, Christopher, don't go anywhere. We're going to take some callers now and we're going to bring you back. So chill out. Try not to be absorbed by 18 people in Joshua Tree. And we're here from, before we bring someone in, I'm going to read one story that I thought this would be a good transition because Christopher and I have this horse connection. I think, you know, we both find horses to be rather symbolic. And I got this story submission. They wanted me to read it instead of them calling in. It's about a centaur.
Okay, you're just going to read. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to read this one and then we'll go to our first caller. She says, "Here is my demonic centaur story. It isn't very long, but it is quite strange. A bit of background. This happened at my aunt's house, which all sorts of strange things happened at. She found out the house was built on some sort of Native American ritual grounds, which may have something to do with it, but I'm not entirely sure. When I was a teenager, I spent a lot of time with her. I would help her out with my younger cousins, so I would often spend the night and crash on the sofa. I never actually experienced any of the strange stuff happening at her house until this. I was 16 at the time. I was sleeping on the sofa, like I always did, and began having a nightmare. In my dream, there was a horned, red, demonic centaur. Man, a centaur trying to pull me off the sofa by my left foot. For those who don't know, a centaur is a half man, half horse. The man is the top half. The house was entirely the same in my dream, with the wall my feet were facing being the only difference. It was a wall of flames and appeared to be a giant furnace. The centaur was trying to pull me into the flames. I was kicking and screaming, trying to get him off me, but I couldn't make a sound in my dream. When I woke up, I was covered in sweat and felt myself being pulled off the sofa. A cloaked black figure pulling me by the same foot was over me. As soon as I saw it, it released my foot. It went through the dining room and into the kitchen. It didn't make a sound and didn't walk. It just floated. I was shaking and had no idea what to do. My heart had been racing for a good 10 minutes. When I started to calm down, I eventually went to the kitchen and checked for the cloaked figure. Nothing was there. It took me a while to fall back asleep, and I eventually did. My aunt always woke up earlier than I did. When I woke up, I immediately started telling her what had happened the night before, and when I pointed down to my left foot, I had seen a swollen mark the size of a golf ball. We both kind of just looked at each other and then freaked out. I put some ice on it, and we eventually left the house. I went with her to do some errands. The swelling started going down later that evening. It was not painful and didn't even itch, which was really strange. I went home that night. The next day she called me and told me she found a very strange looking red spider near the sofa I was sleeping on. She said it looked wicked, and that's in quotes, and she had never seen one like that in her life. I wish she had taken a picture, but she killed it right away. I still have no idea what happened that night, but it always gives me chills when I tell people about it. Yes. It's crazy. You ever been bit by a spider?
No, I have not, thank God.
I got bit by a spider in my sleep once, and it was the worst, one of the worst pains I've ever had, and my foot ballooned.
Oh, God.
Horrible pain. I did not see a centaur.
Yeah, what was the dream like?
But yeah, no, I didn't have any cool dreams, unfortunately. But yeah, it's a crazy story.
Just a spider.
Thanks for sending it. So who do we have? Who's our first caller?
Okay, Okay, we have Bradley. Let me go ahead and bring Bradley in. Bradley, are you with us, Bradley?
Yes. Oh, hang on.
What's up, Bradley?
Here. Can you hear me?
We can.
Hear you.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Thanks for calling in.
I wanted to make sure that I had everything set up. I'm not too loud in the mic, am I?
No, you sound perfect to us.
Sound good, yeah.
Who knows what everyone else
hopefully
though.
hopefully people watching can hear you well, but I think so. Yeah, so Bradley, what has happened to you?
Well, a lot of things. I've been a practicing pagan since the age of 10, and I've dealt with a lot of different entities, and this particular story that I wanted to share with everyone is about a notoriously haunted graveyard in a town that I grew up in.
Let's hear it.
And so me and 4 of my friends decided we were going to go out and visit this graveyard. My friend Neil, who is a rune worker and also a wand maker, decided this would be a great idea for us to go and do some sort of a paranormal investigation. And he took his then girlfriend, now wife, Laurel, and her friend Gloria, and me and my friend Sean out there. And this graveyard is back in the middle of the woods of Missouri. It's in the middle of nowhere.
Is it like a very old graveyard, one of those super old ones?
It has gravestones from the 1830s and 1820s.
Nice.
So it's a very old graveyard. Now, we get out to this graveyard, and the way it's set up is it's got half of it on flat ground at the bottom towards the entrance, and then the other half is built on a very steep hill. But one of the notorious features of this is there is a baby that was buried up in the back corner up on top of the hill. So we're going around, we're searching the gravestones, and Neil, Laurel, and Gloria decide they're going to go up to the baby's grave. And Sean and I stay towards the entrance, and we're looking at some of the older gravestones that are there. Then I look over at Sean. He's just distraught and really worried that something bad is going to happen. I ask him, what's wrong? And he says, man, I just think that we need to get out of here. And I was like, well, then let's go get them and let's go before something bad happens. Right as I say that, a rock flies from the gravel road and hits me. And it flies past Sean's face whenever this happens. We both look over towards the road and we hear laughing. Not child laughing. This is more adults. And what we see are 3 pairs of spectral skeletal legs running down the road away from us. And we just both look at each other and say, we need to go now. And so we yell at Neil and the girls that something bad just happened and we need to go. Neil screams, what? Why? What happened? And right as he says that, all of the largest and oldest trees surrounding this graveyard start lighting up and glowing like they have a spotlight on them. Now, mind you, it is a cloudy night. We did have a full moon that night, and this was during the witching hour that we decided to go to this graveyard. And so the moon is making all the clouds glow, but it's behind a hill where, it would be sitting in the sky at that point, and there's too many clouds. You cannot see it. So there's no reason these trees should have been glowing. As soon as that happens, all 3 of them come running down that hill, and they get over towards the entrance, and we're about to start piling into the car. We see this black figure at the back of the graveyard start running towards us. We all panic and start just rushing into the car as fast as we can. And Neil is trying to start this car. Just trying to start it. Runs it 5 times. It's still not starting. It finally kicks on. And right as he turns the headlights on, that figure is almost to the entrance of the graveyard. And then there's no wind, by the way. All of a sudden, that black figure, as soon as the lights turn on, turns into what is essentially just a cloud of leaves that blow away and then just settle on the ground because there was no other wind.
When you say black figure, is this like a shadow type situation, or can you describe the way it looked?
Yes, it was just basically like the outline of a shadow. What we think it was is the watcher for a graveyard, because many graveyards, especially older ones, have a spirit that watches over the graves, and if you start doing things that it deems disrespectful, they will do things to scare you out. They're usually not harmful. We didn't know that at the time, obviously, but I think Neil and the girls going up towards the baby's grave might have angered whatever this thing was and decided we needed to go.
Did everyone see that figure?
Yes, all 5 of us did.
Wow, and the
We were all
glowing.
screaming. Yep. Well,
Wow.
the trees were glowing so bright that it lit up the entire graveyard. You could see clear as day in the middle of this graveyard.
Okay, so the light was happening across the tombstones as well, up into the canopy of the trees.
Yeah, it was only the largest trees. They just lit
Right.
up like they were being spotlights. It was the
Wow.
craziest thing that I'd ever seen.
Wow.
Like, I've seen shadow people before. That didn't freak me out near as much as the trees just started glowing.
Yeah, that's interesting. And when you finally got the car started, you left and that was it? Have you returned to the graveyard?
I've returned to it since, and I've also learned from a spiritual counselor of mine. I have 2 of them. There's one that's more angelic and one who follows the more demonic path. And apparently in the field across from that graveyard, there is a demonic dragon spirit that actually exists according to his own research. But I haven't had any personal confirmation on that. But that graveyard is notorious for having all sorts of different things happen. I've known people that have gone out there with brand new vehicles, no problems at all with them, and their car wouldn't start whenever they've encountered a dark figure like that.
Interesting. Can you describe what a dragon demon might be?
It's just basically like a prince of hell. It's more of a dragon spirit. There's all sorts of different demonic entities. I mean, if you read any demonology book, you'll see just a huge variation, and a lot of the times a wide variety just in one single demon.
Right.
Just be just an amalgamation of all sorts of different things.
Right.
But this particular one just so happened to be a dragon spirit, and there's a lot of ley lines that exist in that part of Missouri, and what they do is they corrupt those ley lines and feed off of them, and that in turn also makes it very difficult for people to leave. Like, everyone that leaves that town always ends up going back, and they've actually ended up twisting the ley lines in that area into a vortex that sucks people back in. And part of the reason why that thing doesn't like me is I managed to get away and states away, and I don't go back if I don't have to.
Smart.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Well, that's a crazy story.
Yeah, that's wild.
I also like going to old graveyards, and
We know Shane.
I haven't seen anything like that in a graveyard, but certainly have had feelings of being watched in graveyards, and seeing a baby's grave in an old graveyard is like, it's something traumatic just seeing that. And should the shadow figure exist, kind of like that he's protecting it.
Is hanging out in like cemeteries and graveyards the same as having a Ouija board?
I would say no, but Bradley, what do you think?
Sometimes it can be, but that depends on your psychic sensitivity. If you are highly sensitive and also strongly practicing like what I do, especially with different kind of spirits, because what I do as a pagan is I seek out darker entities, more of the like mid-range and low-range, nothing high-end like the dragon demon that lives across from this graveyard, but I seek to remove them once they've overstayed their purpose. Whenever you have a demonic possession in a house or haunting like that, they are usually demons that are basically fugitives, because sadly, as much of a pain in the ass as they are, sorry for swearing, but they do have a purpose, and their purpose is to teach hard lessons. As my spiritual counselor said, the last teacher you have is pain, because it is the only one you have no choice but to listen to. What are demons best at? Causing you pain. They teach you lessons. But whenever they overstay their welcome, they have to be removed. And that's where I come in, or your priest from a Catholic church, or someone that knows how to perform exorcisms would come in. But a graveyard can be like a Ouija board if you're someone that's like me. But for most people that do not have that psychic connection with the world, it's not nearly as bad. So, I mean, you can still be scared out of a graveyard by something, but it's usually not as intense or as interactive as what it would be with someone like myself.
So you have psychic connections. That's what you're saying, right? Like you
It's one of many things that I do.
So do you have to like be seeking it, or does it just happen naturally? You're walking down the street, you're in a store or something, and then something.
I live in a part of the Wild West where a lot of people had just been killed on the plains, and so I'll be out doing my job because I work nights, and I actually have to be at work like 6 minutes ago. But but I will be out there. Yeah, but I will be out there working, and out of nowhere, I will just see a figure staring at me, and then I'll look at them. They'll just kind of stare at me for a minute, and then they just go away. And it's just one of those things, and every once in a while, someone who doesn't know what the hell they're doing or how to ward things off will summon something that's not supposed to be here, and it makes my job so much harder. So,
now, were you born like this? It's been like, when did you discover you had this unique talent? I don't know what you call it.
It started whenever I was 10. Me and my friend got into a bunch of mystic arts. We were in the church, and I was raised Christian, and we decided what better way to fight demonic forces than to use their own abilities against them. And so we began dabbling into that, and what really confirmed it for me was I drifted off one of my early times of actually astral projecting into a different plane of existence. It was essentially a hell realm. Not a fun place to be. Don't go
Doesn't
there.
sound like it, yeah.
No, I was greeted there one time by them having two captives to say hi to me and remind me that nothing's going to change there. And they lacerated their victims and began expressing their sexual proclivities with the lacerations. Yeah, not a pretty place.
Nope.
But the first time that I had messed with that place trying to deal with those things, I woke up to my first sleep paralysis demon, and he was standing over me. I couldn't move, and he stabbed a sword through my head, and I could feel all of it even though I wasn't getting physically injured.
Wow.
I was 11 at the time when that happened.
Wow.
So, yeah, I've delved very deeply into it. There's a lot of things that don't mess with me now because I've gotten very skilled with it. I've actually gotten into making wands here recently, and I've made some for some witch friends of mine. But I'm going to be making one for myself here soon, just to try to help.
Bradley, I feel like we're gonna have to have you on to talk again. There's some more stories I think you have to tell that we'd like to hear. So I appreciate you calling in.
I could probably do an entire episode by myself.
It sounds like you have a career of this. And, well, I appreciate you calling in. Yeah, and we'll be in touch for sure. And good luck out there, and good luck at work. I hope you're not in trouble for showing up late. We appreciate you taking the time.
I'm one of the better drivers, but one thing that if anyone would like to check me out, I do have an X account. I'm not verified on there, but if you just look up Teabag and Elite, I'm not posting anything serious, but I mean I'm posting just pictures of my woodwork. And actually, I was going to say, Shane, if you would like, I don't know how we'd be able to get it to you, just mail it to a PO box or whatever. But if you would like, I will make you a wand to have in your house.
Dang. Well, hit me up. I have your email, and we'll talk.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
You want me to hit you up on the scanner email?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, I will email you on the scanner one, but I better get out of here. Y'all have a good day. And
Thank
I hope
you.
everyone else has a good one as well.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
That's great. Let's pull another caller.
Oh, you want to pull another caller?
Yeah.
Okay.
Christopher, you weren't able to hear any of that, were you?
I think,
Is he with us?
I think I gathered it a little bit. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I couldn't hear him, no, but I could hear you. So I know there was an encounter at a graveyard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a fun game. You can guess what the person says.
Yeah, trying to guess. All I was thinking, I was thinking, not to monopolize this conversation, but I said something once. I walked through a cemetery past the above ground stone pillows, and I noticed the dates that didn't go too long, 1983 to 1987. And I cursed God for bringing something down only to take it away so quickly, like a yo-yo, you know. So
terrible.
There's something about, when you see those little numbers,
dude,
man.
It's the worst.
I like shoebox coffins, man.
I know. When I actually helped dig a grave recently
I don't like it.
I dug a grave recently for an older gentleman, and that grave was going near a baby's grave. I did not like being near that little grave.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and people leave toys there. And
do you think for
horrible.
A baby's grave though, you just use like a kind of like a gardening tool? You don't even need a real shovel, right?
Terrible. I hope not. I want them to use all the proper utensils. I want them to give that baby the best burial.
I know.
You know, those guys, these grave diggers.
If my baby ever died, I would just use my hands, man. I'd use my hands.
Well, that I understand because there's such a grief, and there's stories like in the Bible where the grief is so heavy, you're ripping your clothes off. You know, you're shredding your actual clothes. You know, so ripping the ground open actually sounds, like almost logistical in terms of that most.
Well, to be more accurate, if my baby died, I would dig my own grave and throw myself into it.
You know, and it's weird. I know. I hate thinking about it. And you brought up Stephen King earlier, and I'm not the biggest Stephen King fan these days, but I love his books. And something he said a long time ago sticks with me always. Obviously, he's known for writing fear and horror. And someone asked him, "What's the scariest thing you could ever think of?" And he said losing his kids. And it's the truth. It's the scariest thing to contemplate. And walking through the old graves, especially an old graveyard, like the last caller was going through a graveyard in the 1830s. So, they had much less medicine to deal with. Unfortunately, a lot more.
A kid would get a toothache and die back then.
Yeah, it was brutal times. So
infant death was crazy.
Oh, it's terrible. But we're gonna go to another caller.
Yep, we're going to go to another caller.
Christopher, don't go anywhere, and we'll play that game again if you can see what they said.
Eddie, are you with us?
Yes, I am. I'm right here.
Okay, we can hear you. You can hear us. Very good. Okay.
Go for it, Eddie. How are you?
Well, there we are. Okay, I had a couple of volumes going. Sorry, Shane.
Oh, cool.
Alex.
It's good to have you.
I'm excited to be on because you guys are, again, this week touching on things. I've had all these feelings about and theories about my whole life. So I'm excited to talk about this stuff, especially Bradley. I met him in the chat, and he's a demon hunter. Like, what's
Yeah,
what is that?
It's great. It's amazing. What a great chat room.
Yeah, for real. What's happening in there?
I love it.
So I don't know that I have I have some stories, but I think I don't have any special abilities. I have relatives, my mother, and even some close friends that kind of do. Mm-hmm. But I have always felt somewhat of a sensitivity to things, and it kind of all started for me. And and it's great that you had Christopher here, because I'm going to reiterate his point about the voice of God being music. Okay, because I truly believe in frequency and vibration. I was raised reading Tesla and all that stuff. And being a musician, when I got my first guitar, it was this little Les Paul knockoff, but I was in love with it, and I played it constantly. I would fall asleep with it. In the summertime, 13, 14 hours a day, sweating in my bedroom. And what I noticed over time was that I could feel the electricity in the strings and in the pickups of the guitar. And it was tangible to me. It was in my hands, Yep. So this kind of stuck with me over time. Yep. And then there were a few major events that kind of led me to where I am. I had lived in kind of a creepy house before, but nothing ever really happened until I was in the middle school, and we moved to a tenement house. I'm talking. My cat.
I was like, is that Alex on the soundboard, or is that cats in Eddie's background?
That's Dolly. Hi, Dolly. Say hi to the world, Dolly. Here we go. So we had moved, and I think some of. Let me tell the story, and then I'll kind of point to my point, I guess.
Yeah, let's do it.
We have. We'd moved into this tenement, and really, I had never experienced ghosts. I'd never seen ghosts. I was fascinated by the supernatural. I had read tons of ghost stories. I was always a bookworm, and supernatural stuff was always fascinating to me. Okay? I'm sorry. I'm so distracted. Please stop. But nothing had ever happened to me. I never saw anything. I never saw a ghost. It was just fascinating. At family events, I would tell ghost stories to the kids with a flashlight and better. You know how it is. Right. But there was a point in my freshman year where in this new apartment, over time, like when I would go to bed at night, I could feel somebody touching my leg, like fingerprints and stroking my leg. And this would always happen when you're halfway falling asleep. And this was a time when television used to close out at night with a Star-Spangled Banner, and then it would go to static like the Poltergeist movie. So, you'd kind of wake up and you're seeing static, and you're feeling the blankets get pulled off of you. Right. It was just kind of weird stuff. I didn't put a lot of credence into it. It definitely creeped me out, but I'm kind of logical. I knew I was half asleep, and it was, who knows what it could have been.
Right. Maybe your dreams are populating the real world. Who knows? Right.
Yeah. Then what started to happen is over time I started to have night terrors. And the night terrors became quite profound. They affected me for the rest of my life. I had them well into almost till I was about 40 years old. Wow. And even later. Yeah, and it frightened the horror and the terror that I felt when I'm having these dreams is when it was weird, because I would be asleep, and then all of a sudden, even in my sleep, everything would go real quiet. And then I would open my eyes, and I was between a dream state and a wake state. So I would see whatever was terrorizing me. And most of the time I couldn't see it. It was like a presence. Mm-hmm. It was like a wolf. It was like an evil. It was like something coming from the TV. So I couldn't move. I'm paralyzed. I'm stricken. And I'm trying to scream. You scream, and you can't get this voice out. You can't get it out. But me hearing my own voice is what always got me out of these night terrors. And you would see the dream disappear and fall away, and then I'm back into reality after being terrified. The night terrors could have been a variety of things. They could have been what I think might have been a past life experience. I had these dreams of myself on mountains with wolves for pets. I was a monk in one area. And then other times, I'm literally seeing phantoms and ghosts and faceless entities swirling around in my room, and just terror. It's just a terror, and you can see it.
Are there other people around you while you're sleeping that are watching you go through the night terrors?
Not yet, but it did happen. It did happen. At this point, I'm 15 years old. I'm a kid in my mom's house.
Okay.
But they became so profound that I couldn't sleep anymore. It was the Freddy Krueger cliche. He's going to get you in your dreams. I was afraid to go to sleep.
Yeah.
Over time, I became an insomniac, and that lasted, again, well into my 40s, my insomnia. It was a very real thing that I had to deal with. Eventually, what had happened was there was an event where in my bedroom, I was sitting on the edge of my bed looking out a bedroom window, and I was looking due north. And directly behind me on the opposite wall of my bedroom, on the interior wall, as I had this big, giant chest of drawers. It was actually my parents', but it couldn't fit in their room. It came into my room. It had these very distinct brass handles that jiggled. So when you lifted the handle to slide open the drawer, when you let go of the handle, it made a clanking sound against the wood and the brass fixture on the wood. Very distinct, I would recognize that sound anywhere. So there was an instance here where I'm sitting at the edge of the bed. I'm talking to a friend on the phone, and we're just having a conversation out the window. And subconsciously, I could hear the clanking of the handles in the background. Now, I thought about this later, of course. In the moment, it was definitely different. But now that I thought about it, I think in that time, it was just so familiar to me that it didn't register just yet. Hey, I'm here alone. Who's doing that? You know? And then the girl I was talking to said, hey, what's that noise? What's going on in your bedroom? And I'm thinking, oh, that's just my dresser. Like, I wasn't thinking, like it was like, oh, it was just so common. And then as I turned around to face the dresser, the clanking became louder and louder. And it was just slam, 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 like so loud that it was violence happening there. And then I had a lamp. It was a lamp that I had on a bar stool in my corner of my room. And it came right at me, off the stool, in the air, toward me. Once it got to the point where the cord was still plugged into the wall, the cord kind of grabbed it at its last length, and it kind of fell. It never reached me. But maybe 3 feet in front of me, arm's length in front of me is where it stopped.
Wow.
And so I'm hearing audio, I'm seeing the handles on my dresser clank, and a lamp is coming at me. I jumped like an Olympian, like a gazelle, off my bed. I was to the door in one leap, like 8 feet.
Wow.
And I ran outside into my living room, screaming bloody murder. Now, this is broad daylight, guys. This is like 6 p.m. My whole family's home. It's not at night. There's no spooky things going on. There's no seance stuff. None of that stuff is happening. Mm-hmm. But that terror stuck with me forever. And then over time, I think I started to realize that somehow I was sensitive to, well, I call it energy. I know it's not energy. I just don't have the vocabulary for it. I don't know what it is. Right? But there's something going on that can physically manifest in our realm, in where we are. And sometimes it can show you things. And I think, just like Christopher was talking about earlier, like sometimes you just get into a place where you put your mind in a certain state because of an emotional state you're in, because of drugs you might have been on. I've had these experiences on drugs too, where I'm seeing phantoms. And I told my friends, maybe I'm so close to death because I did so much drugs that I'm seeing death approach. And they're like, no, you're opening yourself up to another realm. Yep. You're seeing something that we don't necessarily see. So my whole belief system after all these years, and I think it's let me bring the point home in this next story, and I'll bring it all home. Years later, about 15 years ago, I was renting a house in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, historically kind of ghosty over there. But I didn't think of it here nor there. Once I moved out of that house, I never had ghost issues really again. I could feel things. I'd been to graveyards. Lizzie Borden's grave is near my house. I can go there. You know what I mean? None of that stuff really happened. So at this new house, the night terrors came back. And then over a period of time, I'm always fascinated in the occult because of all these things. I was raised Catholic and Christian. But because of all these things that happened to me, I had to know, how is the universe built? How does God talk to us? Does God talk to us? Where do ghosts come from? All those simple questions we ask. And then our whole life is just reading and research and all that, you know?
Absolutely.
So I was spending time researching, again, Aleister Crowley.
Uh-oh.
All right. You're familiar with this guy? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think you are.
Yeah.
So in some regard, I hold some credence to his work, but in other regard, at the end of the day, I don't. I like. He's a junk. He was a junkie, and you can't really hold a junkie accountable to the same standard that you could, like an Einstein. You know,
Right.
There's a difference there, and I know that in my experience with these cultures, right? But at the end of the day, this man claimed that he could speak to other realms, and that there was a demon that he was in Congress with. I found on YouTube somebody was reciting some of his incantations and prayers.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I was listening to in my little bedroom. I lived my bedroom. It was 2 master bedrooms on the second floor of this house. Mm-hmm. There was a stairwell that came up that divided the two. There was a cabinetry built into the wall that looked over the stairway. So there's a big opening in the stairway with a light fixture that I could see. Very ornate, very nice. I had my studio gear there. And over time, after a couple of days of really diving into Aleister Crowley, there was one night where I had my MacBook on and it was listening to these incantations and stories. I think it was an audiobook. You might have just been reading from the name escapes me now. Yeah, the big one, the big book.
Right.
But
he's talking about taking the drugs and meeting the demon in like early April or something, and they communicate for 3 days.
Yep. And I remember there were some incantations that I was hearing, but at some point I kind of dozed off. Mm-hmm. And then I saw the light that's in the hallway. It turned on and it woke me up. It's because it was very bright. It was 12 feet away from me. It just illuminated my whole bedroom. And it woke me up, and I thought I turned it on. So I got up, and I thought my roommate was there. Hey, Jenny, are you home? Are you home? Nobody's home. It was quiet. I go back and sit back in my bed. I'm kind of up. I'm looking at my computer. And then I just sit back, laying in my bed. My computer's on my lap. And then all of a sudden, I could hear a rustling sound. And I look out into the opening that looks into that hallway. About 5 feet wide is this giant cloud slowly coming up the steps. It was smoky and dark, but it didn't have a wispy cloud shape. Okay. It was very geometric shape. So it's these geometrical faceted object that's moving and organic. And I saw it slowly come up the stairs. And as this is happening, I'm freezing up. And then it comes into the hallway, and then I can see the tip of it, and it comes into the door and into the bedroom, and it's just coming right at me. And then I'm trying to lay back and get away from it. And then it comes above me, and I'm closing my eyes, and then I'll open my eyes, and in my arms is the body of a dead blonde girl.
What?
Had to be 7, 8 years old. Oh, a child. She had blonde hair. It was long. She was just wearing simple little clothes. It wasn't like any memorable dress. It just looked like an everyday little girl you might see playing in a yard, in your neighbor's yard. Right. And she was dead, Shane. Dead. I could feel the coldness of her body. I could see the purple of her lips and her skin. I could almost, like, it was such a weird smell that was happening in the room.
Right.
And I, again, just leapt up from, like, right straight up in the air, and she came away, and it went into the smoke. The smoke dissipated. Reality comes back. The lights are all on.
So was she lifted out of your arms, like, by the smoke, or did she become smoke? And did you smell the smoke when it was coming up the stairs, or did the smell happen when you were seeing this dead girl in your arms?
When I started to scream, because now, again, I'm in paralysis, so in order to get out of the paralysis, I have to scream. And it's like, you're trying to get a voice out and nothing comes out. And right. You force and finally the scream comes. And that's when all of a sudden, like, it didn't smell like smoke and it didn't smell like death or anything like that. I don't want to say it. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those like ionic air purifiers that some people might have in their home. It almost smells like one of those.
Interesting.
You know, like, it was just weird, but not so clean, a little foul to it.
Right, like a tinge of something different in the air, but it's not like smoke itself. But yeah, because those filters can somewhat do. It's like when you turn on the air conditioner in your car sometimes. It's like a false air. Yeah.
Yep.
That's
And
crazy.
as I leapt, as I got up, my eyes were kind of closed, but she was kind of like, my arms were going, and it was all dissolving, and it was one big action. So it's not like she fell out or the smoke pulled her. Like she and the smoke all disappeared kind of at once. It just fades. It just goes away. It's almost as if it just gets sucked. It's almost like if you took a towel, took a piece of paper or a board, right? You put a pinhole in the board and you poke the towel through that pinhole. So on one side, you can see the whole towel hanging on the pinhole, and the other side, you pull it out. You just pull it backwards, and it just disappears into the wood that way, right? It just goes away, and that was it for me. As much as that was the day that it all ended, to me, that proved that you can make talismans here. There will never be a Ouija board in my house. Nothing resembling a Ouija board will ever be anywhere I live. I keep no mirrors. There will never be a mirror. I keep one mirror in my bathroom to brush my teeth and comb my hair, right? That's it. But these objects, I am positive that, again, I'm using the term energy. I don't know if that's the right word. Mm-hmm. But these objects, if we focus our energy to them, stuff's going to happen. Stuff's going to happen.
That's wild. Did you how did you learn to differentiate between your night terrors and reality?
Well, the terror, because the night terrors were terrifying. Most always, it would be a shape kind of appearing in my room. Like it would be dark, and I'm kind of opening my eyes, and then I could see like a shape.
Right.
Like almost like a blackness within the blackness.
Right. And
then I'm still asleep, but fear comes in. It's an overwhelming sense of fear. It's just
so yeah, it's like a wave of fear that, you know, when you feel that amount of fear, you're like, I'm stuck now. I'm in like a night terror. They're terrifying. I have my son, he doesn't really have much anymore, but when he was younger, had night terrors, and there's nothing scarier than seeing your child having a night terror. Yeah. You can be in the room with them. This is why I asked if anyone was in a room with you earlier. Yeah. You can be in the room, and it's different for everybody, but with our son, you could be in the room with them, and they're screaming bloody murder, and I'm saying my son's name. I'm holding him, and it's like my presence is on the edge of his nightmare, where I'm not there, right? Like I'm just like I'm a vapor at the edge of it, and whatever he's experiencing is the reality, even though his eyes are open. I'd never experienced those until you know, our son had them, and they're terrible. Yeah. Wow, Eddie, that's a wild story.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to bring home the point that Christopher was talking about earlier. Like we're dealing with. I firmly believe we're dealing with frequencies that we just don't have an understanding of yet. I think now that I know more about science and physics and some of these things, that I think we could put a name on it. I don't know that it's truly terrifying anymore. I don't know that it's truly horrible anymore. I think I experienced, and maybe I have a sensitivity to these fields or electricity, if you will. And I think that needs to be explored. And I think, and I just want to throw this in too, Shane. If you haven't seen it yet, because this brings it home so much, because we have talked about Jesus on the show, and one of the things that Jesus has said, and Christopher brought up a statement about Jesus, which was great. But one of the things that Jesus and even Buddha have said is, don't be fooled by your eyes. This realm that we live in is not real. Materialism, this object that you covet, this money that you want, it's not real. It's meaningless. Yep. And Terrence Howard appeared on the Joe Rogan show yesterday, not to plug another show.
Yep. I want to watch that. Yeah.
It brings it all home. It's the unconscious, universal conscious theory, the light that is God, how our universe is made. He puts it made me understand what I had been through. Like, yes, here it is. Everything is alive. Everything is living. And I think sometimes our realm that we can experience here does indeed collide with these other electromagnetic forces and electricity in the air and all the other building blocks of our universe. And I think we're on the verge of a great awakening. I think old science is fading away. The physics of old is about to die. Darwinism is about to die. All of it's dying off. And this new great awakening is happening. And I think it's about the spiritual realm, the divine realm, as Terrence Howard stated it. So I highly encourage everybody to check it out.
I want to watch it, and I really appreciate this call. I love that you told us a terrifying story and you're ending it with but you're ending it with this like optimism, which I appreciate. And I totally, I'm on board with you with like the energy, or however we want to talk about it, that allows us to communicate with, you know, whatever else is on the other side of this part of reality.
Life is simple. If you're going to make soup out of life, if you put shit in your soup, you're going to end up with shit soup.
That's
it.
That's true.
Don't make shit out of your life. Positive
I think
vibes only, be nice.
That's what they say that in the Constitution.
Okay.
Right? Yo, thanks, man. I appreciate the phone call.
Thanks for the invite, guys. Love the show. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Christopher, do you think that objects or energy help us communicate with the other side?
Hold on, let me put on my Shane Cashman glasses really quick.
Did you just get out and get those? Holy moly! Look at us. What are we in a Weezer cover band?
We are.
Post below, please.
Yeah.
My name is Jonah. Say the question again.
Do you think objects can help us, or energy helps us communicate with these other supernatural entities? Like electricity in general. Do you think that accelerates the way we communicate with these things?
Electricity? I mean, well, do you mean like do things hold energy? Like I had a Native American doll that I got, in New Mexico, and I had to get rid of it because it was very stable and it kept falling over, and like weird things kept happening. So I was weird. And then my friend was like, "You should get rid of it." He was a Lakota Indian.
Interesting.
As far as electricity, what do you?
Let me put it like this: when our last caller was, he brought up something you were saying earlier about music, and being like God's voice, and how he was saying he play guitar can feel this like electric, kind of vibe. I'm paraphrasing. What that made me think of is this, and you can react to this. Episode 8 of Twin Peaks season 3. David Lynch shows the audience the atom bomb exploding. And my interpretation is that David Lynch is saying we blew up the atmosphere with all these tests, and that's where these portals opened and thinned the veil between the other world and this world. And that's the episode where we see these type of demonic creatures start to populate Earth. I feel that way because I've had interesting apparition encounters that seem to happen through electricity. It's like they can use electricity, lights, cars, something like a toaster, a microwave, to kind of find a way to communicate with you.
No, I absolutely agree. And ironically, I've been having this issue where, and I think he was speaking on night terrors, the last caller, that my buddy Adriel, who's at this house, he's a soccer fan. He's from Argentina. And then when I go by the TV starts freezing and sputtering out, and he's like, "You need to drink more magnesium or something." Like he thinks that I have like
magnesium deficiency.
Like, what do I don't even know. I mean maybe that's real, but yeah, I agree. I think everything's kind of like a conduit, particularly music and the guitar, even an acoustic guitar, that's a vibrational system. Electric guitar is literally you have to plug it in to like the Tesla model of like, so you're sending sound waves through what is essentially lightning.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So like a guitar is like through like a bolt out of a cloud. And that's kind of crazy. So that's again, great. What I was saying earlier is that it's just a responsibility. You just better be careful. Be careful what you wield, Yes, I'm totally with you on that. I think that's why I also, when I told you about the Surf's Up solo, that's a solo piano version I was telling you about a while back about the Beach Boys. Probably
why
my
it makes
favorite
me cry.
Song of all time, yeah.
Dude, people, please listen up. It's not just the regular Surf's Up version. Go listen to the Brian Wilson piano version, solo piano version. It's the most haunting, beautiful song, but it makes me cry, and it's because I think this stuff can tap into the other world. I was curious what you think about this. John Frusciante, Red Hot Chili Peppers. He used to say he was possessed by Jimi Hendrix, and that's his ability. Like, that kind of falls in with what you're saying about this power that you wield when it comes to art in general. You know, like he's allowing himself to kind of, what he says, be possessed, which I would say is not safe. What do you take away with someone saying something like that?
Well, this lines up great because I did the breathwork thing with Biet last night, who does breathwork with Russell Brand for his retreats and things like that. And I played some songs and played guitar behind her doing breathwork, like the breathwork that like gets you high, and it does. You're like, whoa, my legs are numb. It's very interesting. But I played a Pale King live, and I left, and gentleman, not that that's relevant, but it, you know, I feel like I don't have a lot of Asian fans for some reason, you know, but I was like, it's usually like tattooed white kids who are like 25 to 35 and girls. Yeah. But
I feel attacked.
It was like an older Asian man.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. But he came up to me and he's like, and he goes, "You're Elliott Smith if he died." It's like, oh, but it felt like a compliment. But I was like, oh,
can you repeat it?
But I felt
Christopher,
like freaked out.
Can you repeat it one more time? You cut out.
He said that this first song I played, he started weeping.
Cut out again. The ghost is getting to us, and Christopher's frozen. Wow, this is what you get for messing with it. Christopher, you cut out. My man, I am so sorry. I think the ghost is meddling. Yeah. If you can hear us.
Am I back?
No. But look, let's put Chris to the side real quick. Christopher, you can hear us. We'll come back to you. We gotta find a way to push this ghost out of this room. Who doesn't want us to hear from Christopher? I'm sorry. Sorry to the listeners.
Let me know when I'm back.
Yep. Sorry to the listeners about that.
That's right. We're gonna bring Kat into the room.
All right.
Kat, are you with us?
Kat, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
I think you're back. You're back.
Christopher, we'll be right back to you after we hear from Kat. So sorry, brother. Kat, you are up.
All right. So as I was talking to you on Instagram in my messages, I told you I'd read the room that you're in while I was on the phone with you.
Oh boy.
There's a lot of stuff that I picked up there, but I also have my near-death experience that you wanted to hear about. So which one do you want me to start with?
Let's hear the near-death experience first, and then we'll settle up with the reading of the room.
All right. So I'm going to tell you right now, I may get emotional. I'm a very emotional reader. I pick up emotions, and speaking about this is pretty emotional for me, but I'll try not to.
Yeah, take your time. Take your time.
Yeah. In 2020, in February 2020, I had my second stroke. I've had like 5 or 6 of them. I have a really bad heart, and it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, and I get clots in my brain easily. Well, after my second stroke, they had just gotten me good, and I was feeling my left side of my body again, and I was feeling great. And I told my husband, go home, go be with the kids, it'll be all right. About half an hour later, I started feeling really funny, and my machine started going off, and I hit my call button, and the nurse comes in, and I remember telling her I don't feel very well, and then I was just gone. The first thing that I remember, you know, I'm in a place that's like this amazing, peaceful, calm, beautiful place. Like it's indescribable. You can't describe it. And anybody who's had a near-death experience, I feel like they have a hard time describing what's on the other side as well. But I was then met by my little brother. He passed away. He lost his battle with cancer in 2016. Wow. So when I'm there, you know, like on the other side, there's like zero concept of time. A minute, a year, it's all, but it also felt like I was there for ages, being able to reconnect with my brother and have these amazing conversations. And then, you know, after a while we're talking and he just looks at me and says, all right, sis, it's time to go. And I remember thinking, what do you mean? And I was confused. And then I get woken up and they broke my sternum and my ribs doing CPR.
Wow.
So I was gone for like 13 and a half minutes, and they tried everything to bring me back. And it wasn't until they broke my sternum that I, jolted back into my body. And I remember being incredibly pissed off, like so mad that I was alive and I was ripped away from my brother. And I was like gone from this eternally beautiful place, And then it hit me like, holy shit, I'm back. I need to be here. I have 5 kids,
Right.
So it was like, I don't know, that realization, it helped to like fuel a lot of things. Now, I've been a psychic medium my entire life. I'm a paranormal investigator. I deal with this kind of stuff on a day-to-day basis, but actually being there is completely different than what I see every day. Like I interact with spirits every day, read for people all day long, help them through their grief and different processes in their life. But actually being there, being on the other side is, like I said, it's an indescribable thing. And I've actually studied a lot of near-death experiences since then. And I feel like this is my own take on it. There's a lot of people that say, well, I didn't see anything. It was just black. And, it makes me wonder if that's like the heaven and hell dynamic where they're being shown that there's nothing there for them on the other side, that there's, like maybe you're coming back so that you can make changes. And every time you read an experience like that, they're like, yeah, I changed my life. I made sure that I did go down the straight and narrow and everything, it's crazy to think that you're given that chance to see that you could be left with nothing on the other side.
Did you ever hear about, I think this is a Victorian era terminology, but a place called Summerland? I think people used to call the afterlife. That kind of sounds like what you're describing.
Yeah, I have heard about that. I've definitely seen things about it in different books and such. I'm like everybody else. Like I will read and read and read, and I just absorb information. So yeah, I've read about it.
If you remember, do you know if the people, like when you saw your brother on the other side, are they able to see you? Like before you got to the other side, are they able to observe this reality?
Mm-hmm, for sure. All of our loved ones on the other side, they can see us, they can hear us, and most of the time they try their best to communicate with us. And you were just talking about like how they use energy. They for sure use energy. They use our energy. They use actual electricity to be able to be strong enough to send those messages to us. Unless you're somebody like me, you don't pick up on those subtle hints. But like the knocking you hear in the middle of the night, or you hear your name whispered, that's definitely your loved ones trying their hardest to reach out to you.
Yeah, I feel like the advancements in technology have helped the other side communicate with this side. It's something I've heard from a lot of mediums, but there's stories dating back, hundreds of years of people communicating with what they believe to be the other side, and there was no technology, but it seems to have spiked since, and
well, there's ways before technology as well, like with Ouija boards and tarot cards and seances and things like that. And I actually I create Ouija boards. Like I paint them, I make them out of wood, I customize them for other people. I've been studying different types of divination since I was like 10 years old. So it's not evil to me to see a Ouija board in somebody's house. And as long as you treat it with respect, then it's not gonna bring anything over that it shouldn't.
Right. You're more along the lines of kind of what Chris was saying earlier with art in general, is it wields a power, and you could either go south with it or not. I've never really messed with one, and I don't plan to, but I don't trust it, but I know people who do. I know people who've had good experiences with them and also terrible. I know someone who claims to have been possessed by a Ouija board, but they didn't know what they were doing. So exactly. Yeah, that is wild. So when you woke up in the hospital, is that the last time that you had an experience like that, or heard from your brother?
Oh no, I've died a couple times since then.
Oh geez.
I talk about it so casually, but yeah, no, I've died a couple times since then.
What a sentence. Do you go back to the same place?
Usually, yeah. It's a place that, it's not just my brother that's there. There's other ancestors there. There's other, people that are important to me there. Our pets are there, like I play with my dog my dog that was so heart crushing to lose, and she's there every time I go, it's amazing. Like I said, it's something you can't really describe.
It's unbelievable that you've had to experience this, but also gained access to what I'd imagine is some sort of comfort knowing that this place awaits you.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. They do say, I've studied the Bible. I actually am ordained, but they say in the Bible that your kingdom is being built on the other side, and your ancestors are definitely over there building your kingdom, waiting for you.
Right. Yeah. I knew a psychic medium in Georgia who's a Baptist, and his family, like this guy, he claims to hear a lot of things, and he's predicted things that happen in his community, and he talks to people that he should never have heard from who lived in the 1850s, and you go look it up, and it is odd how much a lot of this stuff adds up that he says.
Right.
His father rejected his abilities, we'll call them, but then at one point he told his father some story that, according to him, only his father could have known, and the man who passed away many years prior. And his father, who rejected this stuff, found a new comfort and actually regained joy in his own life, because I think he was a man who was fearful of his own death,
right.
An old man. So, I've heard these stories from a bunch of people, and I think it's really interesting. Continue. No,
incredibly
sorry.
lucky the way I was raised, because my family, we're all psychic. It's generational, so I was lucky that way.
Wow. So have other people in your family also experienced the other side?
Yeah, me more than others. Like, I feel like I practice and make it work more and more, and it's my job every single day. So, but like I said, I have 5 kids, and they all have their own unique gifts, and it's pretty amazing.
Wow. So before we let you go, could you want to do a reading of this room? You said you're already feeling things. Can you explain what you're sensing?
I feel like Alex gets picked on most during the shows. I've seen her being picked on quite a bit during this live stream and in the previous one. I feel there's a young child there. I feel like it's a boy. There's also a woman in like her late 30s, early 40s, and then there's something maybe a little bit darker but not demonic. It's just, I like to call them like people who are hangry on this side, so they're a little bit extra angry on the other side about the fact that they're gone or whatever it is. But more interestingly, I did pick up quite a few entities with your special guest, Chris. He has quite a few of them with him where he is in Joshua Tree now. And his grandpa's like, I'm right here. As soon as he started talking about his grandpa, he raised his hand and said, yep, that's me. So
So when you say you're seeing this, are you seeing entities, or is that an abstract way of saying see?
Right. So my vision, I see shadows, extra shadows. I also see in my mind's eye. So it's very clear in my mind's eye who is with you. As for who's in the office with the two of you right now, I'm not sure who they're attached to or whether they're attached to the house or the land, but there's definitely entities there with you, not happy about the show, but they're going to let it go on. We were actually joking in the chat because people kept getting kicked out of the chat too, so they were like, it's a haunted chat too.
Haunted chat. That's good.
You're really making me cry.
Are you okay?
No,
You're crying.
I know.
Alex,
I can see that, and I feel bad. And you're gonna make me cry. I'm trying not to pay attention.
You should feel good that they're letting us do the show.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Are you crying because are you sensing stuff?
No, not at all.
Wow.
I feel like she feels like she's watched constantly, and maybe even feels them touching her.
I mean, Alex has had gone through some crazy stuff in this room already, and it has, like, when you say it's attacking her. Have you experienced stuff before? I asked you last week, but like in your life, have you experienced any type of haunting situation?
I mean, a little. I mean, not really. I've had a psychic say, like my grandmother was around, but you mentioned a little boy, right? Is that what you said?
Right.
I know you don't.
He's probably about 7 years old.
Oh, I don't know.
Interesting. When you see it, are you saying like that might be someone
that could be part of the house,
who's a part of the house or part of us from our history?
Right.
But you can't tell.
That, like I said, I'd need more time with that. Doing it from a live stream or a phone call is a little bit difficult. In person's great. I understand that in person can't probably happen. Although I am in North Carolina, not far from West Virginia.
Yeah.
But I'd be happy to come. West Virginia has always been on my bucket list because there is so much there that's haunted, and I just want to experience all of it.
It's if you're obviously you're into this stuff. If you're into it, I mean, this whole state is one big like museum for
right.
ghosts.
It's like a magnet for it.
Yeah, it's strange. And Alex is getting it firsthand. This is why she's been telling me for a while she's not moving to West Virginia.
Like, I'm not gonna be here.
The veil is thin in West Virginia.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate, Kat, you calling in and sharing that story. Again,
No, I appreciate you allowing me to.
It's a haunting story, but also comforting.
Yeah,
you know?
great
Right.
voice.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
soothing.
thank you. Well, I talk to people all day long, and that's my job. So I hear it all the time that I have a great voice.
Thank you for that. We appreciate it.
Well, I hope you don't leave us anytime soon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I
Yeah.
won't. I'm trying not to. I'm holding on. I'm here for a reason.
Well, keep in touch.
Thanks so much.
I will.
Thank you.
Bye.
That was crazy.
That's insane.
That was crazy.
I'm
Alex started
emotional.
crying.
I'm sorry, I had to go off screen for a while.
Wow. That was powerful.
Yeah, that was really powerful. It was great.
The only time I have that kind of emotion was when my grandfather, like I said last time, was communicating with me through the ceiling fan at my grandma's place.
Yeah.
Um,
She said little boy, and my mom lost a child. So
Really?
Yeah, and so that was the first thing
Right.
that came to my mind. That's why I probably got emotional. But
wow. Christopher, we just heard about a near-death experience. You haven't had one of those, have you?
Near-death experience?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Am I back?
Yep, you're back.
Okay, I'm back. Okay, great. I was in Boston, and a bunch of my friends and I were just walking in the night, through, downtown Boston.
Right.
And this homeless man on a mountain bike had a machete, like a Viking or something, and he was riding full speed at us, wielding it. And he had every intention of chopping us and, killing us.
Mm-hmm.
And I dove behind some dumpsters, and I was behind them, and I just kept seeing his mountain bike going back and forth, and he
Goodness.
was just saying weird things. And I remember I was not even scared, but the reality of that, someone has a machete and they want me.
Yeah.
I kind of went numb, and I was thinking about, my childhood, my mother, my father, I just I did the grand, the end of the movie credits,
Right.
in my mind as I laid there. So that's probably the closest I've ever done. I mean, there's some other ones that are probably not appropriate for the show. Yeah.
We'll do that for the after-hour show one day.
Yeah, exactly.
You were before we lost you.
Inverted World After Dark.
Yeah. That's the real dark stuff. Before we lost you, you were talking about a fan talking to you about weeping.
Oh, yeah. He said, because we were talking about sort of holding kind of a dead musician or whatever, within you. And he was crying. He said that you were like Elliott Smith if he never killed himself.
Wow.
And of course, I'm not going to take that because my ego would flare up. But, I mean, I love Elliott Smith.
Right. Same.
Of course, he's my favorite. Right. But within his sort of candor and his tears, I was again, there was responsibility.
Right.
Am I as good as Elliott Smith? That's incredibly debatable. That's bias. I wouldn't say so, but I mean, what is good? I don't know. But the way that he came to me with that, I realized, the folk heroes I have that are dead, there's going to be new people who come to me as a new folk hero who reminds them of a dead one, and then one day I'll die, and then they'll say, you remind me of Christopher Mansfield if he was never dead. Right. And just to see the cycle and kind of what a cliche, but a torch passing. But I wouldn't say it's a torch passing in a runner sense where you hand it. It's more of it's far more spiritual and less athletic.
Yeah, that's something I love talking about with people who write or make art in general, is the lineage of it. And it's almost always like the artist is in communication with the dead. I don't mean in a Ouija board sense. I mean, like, you're looking at the past of all the people that inspired you, who are probably not, a lot of them aren't here anymore. And it's just a conversation you keep having. And that conversation will continue without you. Like when we were in LA a few years, or maybe 2 years ago, we were talking about how Bukowski his old house was nearby. And it's like, there's something about knowing that his presence, that ghost perhaps is nearby, that, I don't know, it's odd. It's haunting, but it's inspiring in proximity to it. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it is really strange because to me it feels like completely spiritual, but almost you could sort of, reduce it to like the simplistic and think, when you're a child and you want to learn to read or write, like language has been invented before you.
Right.
So you have to learn this language. And my language is Bukowski, Kerouac, Elliott Smith, Jason Molina.
Right.
And so it's almost like they're almost become like the Mayans or something, like just, or the Greeks. It's like they become the thing to learn, and it's so it's incredibly impossible to not honor them, because you're just doing what they do. And then what's interesting about it is, like, you kind of become the slang, like the new words that are invented that people start to talk, in the 80s and 90s, and now we get new slang, and we get new versions of writing styles. I mean, like, I know you love David Wallace, David Foster Wallace, and I noticed myself writing like him, but a little broken and a little more like Bukowski. It's like, so I'm like, this is my school, like, and it is usually I'm being taught by the dead.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's maybe why a lot of these things open me up when I say, like, I cry to a certain thing. It's maybe because it's opening up this lineage, this history of all this art, and it's not like a copy and paste situation. It's not someone just trying to redo, like, oh, I like, so and so, I'm going to redo that now. It's, I'm going to take from here, and it happens to, obviously it's different for everybody. All this stuff is subjective, but you take all these things from the past and turn it into something new. It's, I don't, have I ever sent you the Sacred Harp stuff? That's something everyone should listen to. The Sacred Harp Choir.
Yes.
Yeah, it's some of the most beautiful.
When I was, at the studio. It's incredible.
It's unbelievable. But that stuff also opens me up, and I think because that is a conversation with the long dead, because it's very raw, very primal. And for those who haven't listened to it, it was big in Ireland, then went down to Alabama, and people sing in a choir standing in a square, and they sing what they call shape notes. So they're sometimes singing words, but other times just barking notes, like no words at all. And it's very moving stuff.
Well, you know who loves that is the first person to show me that was Bonnie Prince Billy, and then
right.
Yeah, he's obsessed with it, because I think there's one in Louisville, Kentucky. There's one in LA, and he's all about it. And to backtrack a second, there is a weird feeling to learn from someone while simultaneously mourning them. And I think that is a very major sensation. It's like if your father died and he left you a video of how to shave,
Yes.
So it's a heavy duty thing,
That's just life. You're dancing on that razor's edge of constant grief and joy, because when you have right like you talking about kids earlier. There's things of, like, and talk about the fear of losing them. You're like always celebrating the biggest joy of life, and also mourning that yourself. You're finite. Your kids are finite. You have to just accept that, and you're balancing those two things all the time, and it's tough.
Yeah,
and of course
David Foster Wallace on Incarnations of a Burning Child. He said, if you've never had your heart broken and want to have a child. And I've had this terrible thing. I mean, I don't even like to admit it, because I don't mean it in a mean way. But sometimes I'm like, I wish I never did that, because I'm afraid of her choking on a little piece of chicken that I first let her
Right.
have. I'm afraid of her dying in a car crash at 13. I'm
Right.
afraid of her getting assaulted at 18. I'm afraid of her having a bad divorce at 25. I'm
Hmm.
afraid of her getting, you know, tongue cancer at 44. I'm afraid of her dying,
I would say,
and
yeah,
I will
I know.
never be okay.
I know those feelings, but I would say the risks of life are obviously outweigh the non-life, right? And there's no way to avoid
Well,
it.
they do, yeah. What's the greatest? I think that's where I really believe in God.
Hmm.
God is like the ultimate paradox, where he's like, yeah, you can make nothing and nothing will be there, or you can make something and something will die,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
you're like, whoa, what do I do? What do I choose?
You gotta choose life, and and unfortunately, risk is just a part of it. And
Yeah,
you have to somehow mitigate all of that while trying to be a parent and deal with all of the absurd hauntings of your life. Because we're all just here after learning, whatever mistakes we've made over the past 30 or some odd years, however old we are, and we wouldn't be who we are without the problems we all faced, whether it was when you were 13 in probation or, last year or whatever age you were. And unfortunately, that's a hard thing for me to think of too, with kids learning mistakes like that. But it's part of life, It's crazy.
yeah. It really is. I've had a lot of I have a lot of friends. I mean, most of my friends are parents, including you,
Hmm.
and I'm the dad at the park. If she falls, I sprint to pick her up, but then I see these other like mothers like just let them fall,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
and I've talked to a lot of people like that. They're not they're people now. Now they're potential parents. It's like
Yeah.
you've given them to chance. You've given them to God. You've made them be like children makers. They're
It's a
not yours
tough,
anymore.
it's a tough
It's
dance.
hard.
It's a tough
It
dance. Is
really,
my yeah,
it really
because
is.
they got to learn from their mistakes, but you also know they
Yeah.
have to avoid certain things because they're still young. And some of those parents who let the kids fall, I'm like, that must be their third or fourth kid, because they've learned.
Yeah, I think I've heard that too. They're like, yeah, the fourth kid, like they could be like 5 years old. You just like throw them in the ocean. You're like, I don't know, whatever. They're
Goodbye.
fine.
Yeah,
Like,
my
I think
father
you
is the
just get kind
youngest.
of numb to it.
My father's the youngest of nine.
Wow.
But we should probably go to another caller.
Yeah, let's do that.
Christopher, don't go anywhere. We're going to continue this,
Yeah.
and hopefully you can decipher this next caller. Who do we have? Do we know?
Yes. We have JD coming in. JD, are you with us?
What's up?
Hey, how's it going?
It's good. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. I'm a big fan.
Thank you. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, some weird stuff going on today. I happen to be a huge fan of the Beach Boys myself.
They're the best. They're my number one.
Yeah, my favorite song being Surfing Safari, and this story I'm going to tell is in fact about a safari. So I guess I'll just jump into it.
Great. Let's do it.
So I've shared this story with many people, and there's people who can corroborate it. A little backstory first about me, just for context, is I lived in Kenya for 4 years, from the age of 14 until my 18th birthday when I graduated high school from there. And the reason why I went over there is a completely different story. It's another interesting tale, but side note, I was legally exiled from the United States until my 18th birthday. But we'll get into it another time sometime.
Okay.
Perhaps.
That's a big bomb to drop. But let's get to the events after the exile.
Yeah, so there was American teen in the throes of culture shock, and I was
Okay.
living with my Kenyan step-grandparents at the time in the highlands of the Great Rift Valley. So I attended a boarding school for missionary kids as a day student and quickly made friends with other teens whose parents were staffing the school. And these families, they stayed at the school year-round, even when the school was on break. So I always had someone to chum with during the off-season. One of the preferred pastimes of the station kids, as they were called, was riding dirt bikes. And it wasn't long until one of these missionary families took pity on me, having to walk to and from school each morning and night, which was about 10 miles, to the tiny off-grid cottage up on the mountainside and allowed me to borrow one of their extra dirt bikes. So this afforded me other opportunities to join the other boys who had regularly ventured down into the valley on excursions to chase the wildlife and explore lava tubes of dormant volcanoes. And one such occasion, we had planned to go further than we ever had before. We rode down from the highlands with jerry cans of fuel strapped to the sides of our luggage racks and deep into the Maasai land, which is the tribe of that area. We stopped along the way at some of the villages, and we were talking with some of the Maasai warriors there. They were joking with us. They sat on our motorcycles, and we held their spears. We talked with the elders there, and they had no concerns initially about us crossing their territory, with the exception of us continuing in one particular direction. They had cautioned us about traveling any further to the southwest of that area. And no specific danger was mentioned, only that we were free to go wherever we pleased, but we should avoid that area. So, being reckless teens and knowing that direction was the most remote, we decided to do exactly that and throw caution to the wind, headed in the direction we were warned not to travel in. So we've been riding hard for a good while, and the land was pretty rugged. There was no trails present. We forged on through really dense bush, and jumping over warthog burrows that were appearing suddenly, and the obstacles were becoming more challenging. I was focusing pretty intensely on not somersaulting over my handlebars when I almost crashed into the back of my buddy's bike, not realizing that he had stopped. So I flipped the kill switch on my bike and lifted off my goggles, and I called over to my buddy who was already off of his bike and standing a few yards away, and he motioned me to come over and check something out. And I walked over to him as our other friend circled back, realizing that we had stopped. And there was a circle of white stones in a small clearing, very similar to a fire pit, about a yard in diameter. And in the middle of the circle was a severed head of a goat and all four hooves. Now, we were pretty freaked out, but there was no sign of slaughter in the immediate area. No other parts of the animal were nearby. No blood trail. Just the head and the hooves.
Did it look fresh or like it had been there for a while?
Yeah, it was really hard to tell. We looked, we kind of looked around to see if, this was sort of some weird result of, a recent kill or something like that. Because, mind you, we were riding where there were lions and hyenas and all sorts of other wildlife out there.
Right.
So my other friend pulled up, and got off his bike. And he was like, whoa, what the hell is this? And, we all shrugged and looked around and trying to figure out what was going on. And when I tell you there was nobody around, I mean, there was no possible way for anybody to hide. You could see straight across the plains for miles in every direction. And then out of nowhere, seemingly out of thin air, a man just walks right up to us as if he was just standing, a few feet away from us. And my one friend was he was so startled. I vividly remember him exclaiming "Oh shit!" and jump back. It was like a jump scare from a horror movie.
Did he look a certain way? Was he dressed a certain way?
So yeah, he was. He had a very unassuming appearance. He wore a Maasai plaid blanket, which is pretty common. He had beaded jewelry on his wrists, and he had sandals made out of tire treads. He was probably about 6 feet tall, bald. But the one thing I'll remember about him is his age was very indeterminable. I mean, he could have been anywhere from 40 to 65 years old. I could not tell.
Right. Interesting.
But
did he have a facial expression? Is there any type of emotion to his face?
Yeah, he was smiling. He was, very disarming. He didn't walk over with a scowl or anything, and he greeted me very, in a friendly way. He said, "Habari za leo wazungu," which is how are you, white guys? So, I was the only one who spoke Swahili amongst my friends. So I said, "Hey, we stopped because we're looking at this circle, trying to figure out what it is." And he explained to me in a very matter-of-fact way that he had built the circle and he placed the goat parts there in order to bring rain due to a month-long drought in the area. So I was pretty confused by this as I was translating for my friends. And, at this point in my life, I did not acknowledge the existence of supernatural. I didn't believe in God, the devil, especially, magic African witch doctors or anything like that.
Right.
So I was very, very dismissive. This seemed like a bunch of superstitious nonsense to me at the time, but he changed the subject and he began to address me as a specific name. He called me Leleito, which at the time I had no idea what that meant, but in retrospect, I've been able to research this a little bit, especially in preparing this to tell this story for you. And I found out that in the Maasai, Leleito is a name, and they often name each other based on, the time of day, or whether you're born at night, or whether you're born during a drought, something like that. And Leleito means born during a thunderstorm or rain bringer, which I would also learn during the research of my own story that I was in fact born during one of the most sudden and severe thunderstorms in the history of Chicago, which was also preceded by a long drought. So you'll get the relevance of me bringing this up a little bit later here, but at this point, I had not asked for his name, so it occurred to me to ask him for his name, and he gave me a very cryptic response and said that he had many names. He started to list animals. He said he was an owl, a jackal, a snake, and sometimes a bat when he slept. So this was, he might have said that he was other animals as well. I don't particularly recall. Later on, I would find out that Africans don't really like certain animals because of the connotation they have with witchcraft, specifically owls. They think that witch doctors astral project into owls and watch people in the night. But he started assigning animals to us at that point. He pointed to my one friend first and called him a hyena. And I translated that to my friend, and he instinctively and appropriately began to laugh like a hyena. It was pretty bizarre, but...
Are you feeling at ease in this conversation, or is there fear?
Yeah, I'm at ease. It's just, telling the story. I've told it to many people, but telling it in such detail kind of, takes you back to it a little bit. So it's just kind of gives you the heebie-jeebies, so to speak, because it was something that really happened to me, But
so he's assigning names or animals to you guys.
Yeah, and he also sort of started describing our spirits, or I guess you could say auras. He said that same friend had a blue spirit, and my next friend, he said he was a bird and that he had a green aura. I remember feeling like weirdly jealous because green was my favorite color. So he addressed me as that name again, Leleito, and said that I was a lion, specifically a thundercat. And I was, at the time, I was like, okay, that sounds pretty cool. I was a teenager. He said I had a mane of lightning, and my aura was like golden color, which I thought was pretty cool. At the time, I was like, well, that's
I'll take it.
Golden. Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, I'll allow it. But I had taken a novel interest in the conversation at this point, and my friends were losing interest because, they didn't understand what we were talking about. We were speaking in Swahili. And this is when he began to speak to me about my past, started describing some of my childhood experiences, even some things that I'd never shared with anyone ever before. So it took a bizarre turn at that point. And he talked to me about my future and my destiny. I remember him telling me something that stuck with me, that I was fatherless and always would remain so, which was, true of my childhood. My father left at a very young age, and so, and then even as a grown man, like I started developing a relationship with my father-in-law, and he also left the picture, right? So
Wow.
just a very interesting kind of
He had an
prophecy, if
insight.
you will.
Yeah, he had an insight into you.
Right. So he told me a lot of facts about my life, even predicting the birth of my first child being a son. Which I guess 50% chance, right? But
Still, he tried.
yeah, I didn't understand everything he was telling me at the time, but I can just say, like, over the course of my life, some of his statements have returned to me during some unexplainable circumstances and seem to fit really perfectly into place.
Wow.
So my friends were they were getting pretty restless at that point and wanted to move on with our journey, and were pestering me to kind of cut our conversation short. And uh, I told him I had to go, and shook his hand, and he thanked me. Specifically, he thanked me for bringing the rain. Where at which point I awkwardly kind of laughed and replied, "You're welcome." I didn't know that was when probably the most bizarre aspect of this story was about to unfold. So as we regrouped, we collectively agreed we needed to head back, and we had several hours of riding ahead of us to get back to the school. And I looked back over my shoulder to see where the man had gone, and wouldn't you know it, just as mysteriously as he had appeared, he was gone. And without exaggeration, again, there was nowhere to slip away to. There's no way that he could have just like ducked behind a rock or a tree or something like that. So we get on our bikes, and as we start riding, I start to feel droplets hitting my arms. And I don't know if you've ever been on a motorcycle in the rain.
I haven't.
It feels like needles if you're like driving at high speed.
Right.
So the drops began to increase in frequency, and they quickly gave way to like a deluge of hard rain. And the craziest thing about this was there was not a single cloud in the sky. The sky was not darkened. There was no clouds. There was just, torrential downpour out of a clear blue sky.
Wow.
There was
wow.
thunder cracking around us. The rain was like blinding us.
Blue sky, crazy rain.
Crazy rain, like something I've never seen before. I haven't seen anything like it since.
And you're looking all around you. No clouds, but rain coming from somewhere.
Yeah, and at that point we even had to stop our bikes. It was that extreme that we couldn't even continue to ride. And then the storm just suddenly, the rain just halted like on a dime. The only proof of that phenomenon occurring was the fact that our clothes were still like soaked.
Right.
So we get back to the school, and one of my friends had told their parents of what had transpired, and they were really disturbed by it. And it was pretty evident to them that we had encountered a witch doctor, and they forbid us obviously from ever going back to that place again. But to this day, I've researched scientific explanations or other weather marvels. There's really no description of historical events that I've found that seem to match my experience. But maybe it really was magic. And the fact that the man with the tire sandals said he was trying to summon rain, and that he in fact ran into me, calling me the rain bringer. I don't know who or what he was praying to or sacrificing to or for, but he spoke unknowable things to me, and some of those specific events have happened in my life.
It sounds like it sounds like you were part of his ritual and didn't even know about it. He was waiting. He was waiting for the what was it? Thundercat?
Yeah.
Thundercat.
Yeah, right. And so that's my story. I just wanted to share it with you and the viewers here.
It's great.
Thanks for sharing.
I love the image of a total blue sky and a horrible rain happening. You said, and this is in Kenya, you said?
Right, yeah. And I'm not a psychic or a demon hunter or anything. I'm just a normal guy. My son's watching upstairs, so I wanted to give him a shout out.
Oh, incredible! Well, thank you for calling in. That's a great story, and
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I want to look into more witch doctors in Kenya now.
Right.
I actually visited.
Have me on.
Yeah, of course. Have a good night. I visited a shaman for a while who's from Africa.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, we lost
Chris
our
was
friend.
gone. The
Okay.
18 people are we can go to the next caller though.
Sure.
I visited a shaman for a long time. He healed me of a lot of physical issues I was having. I had like terrible allergies.
Oh yeah.
And this is back like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
My normal doctors couldn't give me anything that would help. And this guy, someone was like, I know a guy who cured someone's cancer. I'm like, well, if he can cure cancer, he's got to be able to cure my allergies.
And
I met him. He's this little African man. And he said he pushed like evil spirits out of me. And at this point, I'm like, at that point, I did not believe in God or anything. I was just like, whatever, dude, if you want to push evil spirits out of me, like, go for it. If it's going to help my allergies.
sure, I'll take.
And then
it.
he gave me some herbs, like herbal remedies, and like this weird thing to drop on my tongue. My allergies were gone. I never got them back.
Oh wow.
Yeah. He was awesome. He's
Well,
since
I
passed
guess
away.
It worked then.
Since passed away. So I've met some African.
So you don't have allergies anymore?
I have. Oh, here in West Virginia, I do. As
Sweet.
last year, whatever ghost plants are in this weird state
Oh, sure.
have made me sick.
Oh, who do we have? Jared? Jared, are you with us?
Oh, I can hear a creaky
gosh.
chair.
That wasn't even me.
Uh-oh. It wasn't even you on the soundboard. You said, what's his name?
Jared?
Jared, what's up?
Not much. How are you doing, Shane?
We're good. Thanks for calling in.
Thanks for having me.
What have you encountered?
Well, as I wrote on X to you, that I had a demon story of some sort.
That's right.
What I perceive as a demon. So it's me, my girlfriend now, wife Michelle, my best friend Josh. We shared an apartment together in Shippensburg around 2011. The apartment is a house that got split into two, a downstairs and an upstairs apartment. So my best friend goes that he's claiming that he is seeing shadows. I'm like, all right. Like, I didn't believe in any of this. I was pretty much an atheist at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And then Michelle goes to me that she was hearing footsteps in the vacant upstairs apartment.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So we kind of did a little thing. We went to the basement and we did an EVP session with our phones. And she ended up capturing a name, Weigel Jacob, which is in the little clip that I sent you. That was the voice that we got. I didn't think much of it. She researched the history of the land and they found Jacob's name on it. But he didn't live in the house that we were in. Jacob Weigel fought in the Civil War, but died around 1871. Mm-hmm. The house was built right after his passing. His wife and family built it. So within the year, we did another EVP session, me and her, in the vacant upstairs apartment. I was asking questions in one room. She was asking questions in another. And before I left this room, my phone just suddenly ran out of space. I'm like, all right, I'll just turn off the recording and everything. And before I walked out, my left arm felt like it was being grabbed, like, kind of like, get over here. I was like, okay, what was that?
What have you done now?
Yeah, well, before all this happened, I was saying a bunch of crap because I didn't believe in any of this. So I was like, I'll provoke this thing. Like, what's the worst that can happen to me? Yeah. So
Famous last words.
Yeah, famous last words. So I got out of this room and I'm like, all right, I have the video somewhere, but I just can't find it. But I have a video. I just started filming the wall and just asking the questions, and all of a sudden I see this orb going into my arm and then shooting right out. And I put the recording into a software I had at the time, and I just slowed it down, zoomed in, and I'm like, okay, that is an orb. That's not a bug of some sort. There's something literally just came into me and ran out of me. So about a year later, we get it out of this place and we move practically just right down the street from this house.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm drumming one day, just going at it, and I'm like, all right, I'm a little sweaty, I'm just itchy. So I take the little drumstick and just start scratching the spot where I was. And I'm like, oh my God, like this thing ain't going away. So I just scratch it again. I'm like, all right, I'm done drumming. I'm getting up. I called my best friend over, took my shirt off. I'm like, hey man, what is on my back? Because it seems so itchy. He's like, you got 3 claw marks just going down from your shoulder to the middle of your back.
Whoa. How long after was this since the encounter with the orb? Sorry if I missed that.
No, you're good. I would say about a year.
Okay, but you're right down the road, right?
Yeah, right down the road from it. And
Okay.
I forgot to mention this. The scratches felt like, the only way I could describe it is just like getting really bad sunburn. Like you can feel the heat coming off of it.
Wow.
Yeah, and I know he took a picture to show me, and I wish I still had that photo. But
And
it
looked like 3. You said they were going down your back.
yeah, it was from probably what you could touch the top of the shoulder to almost to like the middle of your back.
What do you make of this?
So, you know, I didn't think much of it at the time. I just brushed it off kind of weirdly. I'm like, all right, I just got scratched. Whatever.
Some ghost scratches, right? You don't want to confront it. It's kind of weird.
Yeah. So, in retrospect and reflecting on it, I think I might have provoked something and it followed me, and all I can think of is some sort of demon just followed me.
Right.
And just want to make an example out of me, and somehow that didn't work.
How long did the scratches last? Do you remember?
Probably within the day.
And they just disappeared?
They what?
They just disappeared, or were they itching the whole time?
They didn't itch as much as when I first started feeling it. I mean, this is going back probably 11 years now.
Right.
And yeah, it went away within a day, and I just didn't really think much of it. And in retrospect, I think something demon-like was attacking me.
Right. Yeah. Are you still in that area?
No, I am not.
Okay.
I'm a little bit further south now.
Okay. And nothing else since?
No, nothing else since. That was the only those experience in the old apartment and the following apartment was the only paranormal experiences that I ever had.
Interesting.
I do have some kind of little weird stories.
You want to tell us? We can do one quick one before we go on.
Well, not to self-promote, but I was writing this story at the time that I got published, and
Awesome. Congrats.
Oh, thank you. And I kind of needed a scene where my main character was just buying guns, evil person,
right?
The antagonist in the story. And so I just started researching. I'm like, okay, got that. 3 months later, I work for a firearm distribution.
Interesting. So you're saying you manifested something?
Probably.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. It's kind of like what I don't really believe in coincidences. I think there's something greater at play with these things.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want to say? It's God or synchronicity, something. You kind of open up something. You open yourself up to something.
Oh, definitely. And just being the little skeptic of how I was and being an atheist, it kind of changed and warped my perception a little bit more. It's like, all right, I think there's something there. And now I'm a believer in God. I believe in Jesus and everything.
Right.
And
yeah, that's great. That's great. It's funny how that works. It's like
yeah.
It's almost like a domino effect. You encounter one odd thing, and then if you want to accept that, everything else starts to fall away, and you see a whole other world. It's pretty beautiful. Although it's a little annoying when you get random ghost scratches on your back and you don't know why.
Yeah, really. And you just shrug it off like, nothing happened. It's just
Yeah.
some weird thing over here.
Yeah, there's probably something at Walgreens I can get to take care of demon scratches, right? Like,
Probably.
Some ointment.
Yeah, I'm surprised Big Pharma hasn't cornered the demon market yet.
Aloe, come on.
Yeah, aloe. Yeah, ghosts hate aloe.
Ghosts hate aloe.
It's all natural.
Well, hey man, thanks for calling in. I appreciate these stories.
Hey, man, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Have a great night. Did Christopher return?
He's here.
Oh, we thought they got you.
He just poofed.
No, I'm back, and I just I didn't hear what you said, but I had a conversation with my friend Adriel real quick, kind of like summarize. I'm like, yeah, they're talking to people, I can't hear them, so I went inside real quick and had a glass of water, and we were talking about the Mothman and the clown and electromagnetics. And he is a very smart guy. His father did what you did, Shane. He was this professor, like with writing and stuff. Mm-hmm. And he said that the genius is the Mothman. And I'm like, whoa, right? Like, because something's happening, good or bad, there is that thing. You know what I mean? It's like whether the bridge is being built or destroyed, the guitar is making a song or being smashed, that thing is there, and you choose to deify it as God or the devil,
as good or bad,
and
right?
Yeah, and that was like,
dang.
I go, you should just come on this.
Dude, that's amazing. Yeah, because I mean,
actually so good.
We walk away with different interpretations, because the people, like I think the guy who wrote the book Mothman Prophecies was saying, I believe his synopsis or his conclusion was these premonitions were from the Mothman warning this community of a terrible event that was going to happen. But then other people would argue that the Mothman did it. And then, there's a science community who steps in and says, well, in fact, it was just a bolt that was a little loose in the bridge. And it just so happened, to lose, I think it broke or something. And then the weight on the other bolt just collapsed the whole bridge.
So it's almost like, this is like a theory that like, that like governing dynamics, like Beautiful Mind, like when you come up with like a theory at MIT, I was trying to think of one, and this is kind of like Mothman. Is it Mothman or the bolt, right? Like I called it imposed destiny. So let's say if you fly on a Cessna 1,000 times, you have more chances of crashing, just statistics.
Right.
And if you fly one time, your statistics of crashing are very low. But what if there's a person in the Cessna that flew 1,000 and there's a person in the Cessna that flew once?
Whose destiny takes over?
Exactly. And I think that's the Mothman.
Yeah. Wow. Imposed
or
destiny.
Or maybe it's just the bolt. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I've yet to find the answer. And a lot of people go, oh, it's the plane. But then well, now you have to talk about who built the plane. What about their karma?
It's the chaos and structure of God and nature all happening at once, and it's just everything happening. I mean, it's hard to. That's why you can't comprehend God. It seems like I think there's an F. Scott Fitzgerald story about if this didn't happen, then this would happen, and it leads up to a car crash. It's a short story. It might even be the Benjamin Button original short story.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But it's like it's almost like a domino effect. You take this way, you take this way, but it's a domino effect where it's infinite dominoes happening all around the world, and all of those are different destinies. And that's why people, I believe in free will. I believe that God gave us free will to walk this earth with free will, but there's those other people who believe in determinism and that they don't have any free will, and that they're locked in whatever reality they have, and there's nothing they can do to fix it.
Man, I mean, those are questions I could have opinions on, but not know. I mean, Biet Simkin, the breathwork woman, like I said, she had a daughter. I think she might have been 7 or 9 months. I mean, God forgive me if I forget the month, but either way, her daughter died, and and she basically went crazy. Of course,
right.
Hopefully, used her hands to. And then she told me, she goes, one day I'll tell you about the box, because she couldn't even afford But what happened is now she has 2 children, and she's a New York Times bestseller.
Right.
And but what she said to me, she goes, "There's no accidents," and she said, "No, I have 2 living ones."
Wow.
And I was like, the way she put it, but I'm like crying as she's telling me this, like she was so positive about it, which someone could take away. Why aren't you mourning this more? And it's like, I think she did. It's more she's honoring it, and I think that's like so brave and wild and huge. And that's kind of like, that's when you find God, is when, she calls it a shock. Like when you were like, I can't handle what happened to me.
Yeah.
Then that's like when God is there, and he's like, go this way or this way.
Yep.
I think
that's why I reject nihilism so much. It's because as much
terrible.
grief and horrible and things happen in the world, you have to choose to go through life, hoping, you get what you get. And, I've seen people go through miserable, horrible things, losing people, losing children, losing loved ones, parents, obviously all these things that will unfortunately happen to all of us to some degree, until the very end.
Well, once you realize that it is absolutely inevitable, and you're not alone in it. I mean, you want to talk about like what makes people feel good as community. It's like, well, everything bad that's going to happen to you is going to happen to every other living being. So you're not alone. You're never alone in even the darkest of things. And nihilism to me is like, ordering Domino's and watching The Office. It's like, that's death. That, nihilism is death. Like real death is real living.
Yes. Nihilism, I would say it's living death. You're pretty much a zombie. You have no hope. There's nothing, and you're letting the world crush you, and you want to be crushed because you find no joy and meaning in anything. And you also don't want to just destroy yourself. You want to destroy everything around you because it's contagious,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, it's so strange. It's almost like if someone said, you have 10 years of joy and then it's all going to go away. And then you go, it's all going to go away? Well, never mind. I don't want it.
Right.
I'll just be miserable for 10 years until it goes away. It's like, no, take it.
You got to live with it.
And that's hard, You
got to champion whatever time you have on this planet, whether you know it or not. It's we all know one thing, and it's not forever, and that's it.
Yeah. And I will say, I don't know if we're wrapping up, that I definitely don't do that all the time or know how to sometimes.
Right.
And that's one of my biggest like battles, to just appreciate like the sticky-eyed morning and standing up out of bed and like, I mean, sometimes I hate it, and then I have to go, wait, like, no, this is it. This is good. And
it is.
And that can be tough.
I would say that I know that feeling, but I would say that as someone who makes music and pays attention and observes acutely, you are paying homage to every small, beautiful detail. But it's easy to forget those things because, again, as much as we probably don't live within that cubicle reality, it seeps in because life, it has this, modern materialistic life has its structure that we're kind of always battling against.
Well, I mean, I appreciate that, but I think some of the problem is to be like, kind of like a field reporter, like a Hunter Thompson or like a documentarian. It's like you can watch the bear eat the salmon, but and write about it, but you don't get to enjoy it.
Oh yeah.
So, it's like sometimes I don't practice what I preach.
Totally understand that. Yeah, because you become the observer. You might be hyper aware in the moment, but you are also just beyond the situation at all times because you're thinking about how maybe I might be projecting, but how you can translate that into the art or the music or the paper or whatever.
Well, no, of course. I mean, it becomes kind of like, escapism, which is essentially almost nihilism. But I've talked to some actors, like he wouldn't mind me mentioning him, like Chris Bauer. He's from The Wire, and he's become a great friend. And I recently just was like kind of in a movie as like kind of a featured extra, and he's going to put me in another movie, you know, because
Awesome.
if he saw my music videos look like movies lately.
Yep.
And I said it was the happiest I ever was because I wasn't me.
Right.
And he said, he's like, yeah, that's what it is. And I was like, well, is that good though? Like, you know,
That's what I was just gonna say. Is that
yeah,
good?
is that a good thing? You know, but you know, because you get to like for 6 months. I mean, because you look at someone like Daniel Day-Lewis, and you're like, oh, for like 3 years, he's like an oil miner.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And
Right.
but like, and then people say he's never had a character, and then you go like, man, maybe he's like really sad. He doesn't want to be him, and
Right.
that's like, that's what it takes to get there. But then you go like, but just kind of hearing that a lot of actors that I know, you know, Adam Goldberg, it's they're like I like to not be me. So that's essentially, it's almost like, what's the difference between pretending, if your name is Adam, pretending your name is Brandon, you know, and you're a car racer and you're not
Right.
Adam who lives in New York with his children. What's the difference between that and like a guy in a basement doing heroin?
Right.
They're very close, but one of them makes art, you know.
Right.
But
I would say
so
it's sad to not want to be yourself. I understand the art aspect, and for me the line to draw would be when it starts affecting your family, I guess, you know, or you're sacrificing the innocence of your kids or something, where you're like, all right,
Yeah.
this has gone too far. The art, because a lot of people who make art think they have to suffer, which summons up a lot of demons, you know, to various degrees. And you know, I've some friends who they think they have to suffer to make anything. I think we all suffer to some degree, no matter what, because we're on this planet. But we find the joys in it and do with it what we can. But you shouldn't have to suffer to make things, you know.
yeah. Well, I mean, I've thought of this. Like, let's say you or I wanted to write about the heat of a stove. It's like we know we could write about it perfectly. Do you actually have to press your hand on it?
Oh yeah, good
You
question.
might,
Yeah,
you know.
it's a tough one because I'm the person who likes to write from the field, you know.
Exactly.
So
It's like you might. Yeah, I mean, well, I think the difference is it's almost like my father would tell me is like like joy is through moderation. So it's like maybe go like, you know, a quick little one, but don't
right.
keep it
Then,
there forever.
and then the problem is, and this kind of ties back to a lot what you're saying tonight, is how far do you go? Because some people be like, well, I just touched it a little bit. Next time I'll go back and do a little bit more. You know,
Yeah.
some people got to learn their lesson real quick and be like, all right, I don't do it again. There's other people who will keep returning to it, you know.
Yeah, well,
you got to
yeah,
be careful.
The definition of insanity is, you know, repeating the same mistake. I mean, I think it's like, yeah, you and I you probably would touch it quicker than me. I'd probably keep it on there for like a week. But then you have like Sylvia Plath. She's like in the oven.
She's done. Yeah, she's fully committed to the oven. Yeah, it's a horrible thing.
Yeah.
But dude, we're gonna wrap it up.
Cool.
Where can people find you? What's the best place to send people?
I would say probably my Instagram, Fences Music, and then in my bio there's a link to buy the book, to watch the 2 newest videos. Yeah, the Spotify links to buy records and everything like that. And I wanted to say in closing as well is like, you know, I've done Duncan Trussell, Mark Maron, and this was my most favorite. I feel very
dude.
emotionally, spiritually, and intellectually stimulated. And it was,
man.
you know, I wish I could have heard the people talking, but I feel like I kind of did, which makes it even more spooky.
First of all, thank you. Second of all, you heard them through osmosis. I sent them to you because I have psychic abilities now from Operation Stargate. And
You pretty
next
much,
time,
you really do.
next time, I'd love to have you here. But you're an amazing second guest. I'm so glad we had you on, man.
It was
And,
nice to meet you. You have a great name too.
He does have a great name. I hope everyone checks out Christopher's music with
Thank
Fences,
you.
all the people he's collaborated with. He's legit one of my favorite artists, one of my favorite people. And yeah, man, thank you and have a great night.
Take care.
Yeah, thank you, brother. Love you. Thank you.
Love you. Peace. Do we have other callers? Do we have time?
Oh, how do I do? Yes, we do have one more caller.
Let's do it.
Okay,
All right, let's do it.
In. Carrie is her name. Carrie, are you with us? Carrie?
Hello?
I'm hearing like ghost voices.
I know, what is
I don't know,
that?
Carrie, if you heard that, but we heard ghost voices
Please
in the
tell
background. Was it
the
me?
TV on.
Was it me? Can you hear us, Carrie?
I haven't heard anything, but you never know.
Sorry, y'all.
Hey,
Okay.
Carrie, how are you? What's going on? Tell us your story.
All right. Well, I've had paranormal experiences all my life. I was even told stories of imaginary friends I had as a toddler. One of them was like a little boy named Malachi that took baths with me and wasn't allowed to leave the bathroom.
That's a terrifying name and situation.
Malachi?
Malachi.
Yeah.
Okay. That's weird. Tell us more.
But I was a very Christian kid. I was the weirdo that said a prayer every time I saw roadkill. But looking back on it now, I think I kind of used going to Bible school and stuff with my friends as like an escape, because my parents were really bad into like drugs and violence and all that.
Wow.
But the first negative thing I remember seeing was the summer before I turned 9. I was playing by myself in my room, and I had one of those old glass coffee tables with the fake gold stands.
Yep.
And I was sitting in front of it, and I looked up to see my reflection in the metal.
Yep.
And it was pretty distorted, but the closer you got to it, the clearer it was. And I could see myself with some sort of like black blob behind me. I turned around, but there wasn't anything black behind me, so I turned back and stopped moving to see if it stopped, and it didn't. It kept getting bigger in the reflection, like it was coming closer. And then it got close enough to show like long, solid black arms, like reaching out for me. So I ran, took off out of my room, and of course no one was home. So I didn't know what to do. I ended up taking duct tape and went back, and I taped over every single reflective surface in my room.
How'd that work out?
I couldn't see anything, so it made me feel better.
It's funny. It's like how old were you when you said that happened with that part with the mirrors?
I was 8, about to turn 9.
It's weird that you intuitively knew. Like, I just got to cover the mirrors. Because like I said, I think I said it last week, I met people who collected mirrors who they believed the mirrors were in rooms where people died. So it's like, you kind of were like, I got to stop this somehow. So duct tape. God bless duct tape.
Oh, yeah. Like, I've saw all kinds of stuff, but probably 80% of stuff I've ever seen was in a mirror or some kind of reflective surface. I think it's just easier to see things through there. And I think it also absorbs all the energy from people staring into mirrors all the time.
Old
just
mirrors,
how, like, you give energy in a conversation talking to somebody.
Right. Is it old mirrors, new mirrors? It's just mirrors in general?
Mirrors in general.
Wow.
Even TV screens, the reflections on those.
Wow.
That's what I think.
You don't have a
anyway.
TV like Shane.
Yeah. Do you have a TV in your house?
I got one. I just deal with it.
I got one. I just deal with it.
See how the world works, Shane.
Wow. Well, I can't. And I don't even see anything in them. That's crazy. So what else have you seen these in other mirrors? This is just a continuation? It always happens to you?
Yeah. It started out that way, and then it got pretty bad after some bad things happened. After my dad ended up going to prison after he killed this woman.
Oh my goodness. How old were you when that happened?
It was like a few months after I saw that black mass.
Oh, wow. So you were really young.
Yeah.
Wow.
But after that, I started seeing a lot more negative stuff. And I thought I was just crazy. I must be like schizophrenic, something like that.
Right.
But then a few times I would be hanging out with a friend and they would see the exact same thing that I did.
Interesting.
And
so they were able to see what you were seeing, and this is kind of, I guess, confirming these visions you're having.
yeah. On one hand, I was kind of glad that I wasn't crazy. But on the other hand, I was kind of hoping that I could take some magic pill and be normal.
Right.
But anyway.
What exactly were you seeing? Can you describe it?
There was the scariest was this lady. Well, I called her the lady. She was attached to me for a very, very long time. I assumed it was the lady that he killed, but thinking back on now, I think it followed my family for a long time. But
So
it was this woman.
You think it might predate the murder then?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. So you think it was the woman you were saying?
Yeah, because I found out later, I ended up talking to my mom, and she mentioned the only paranormal experience she ever had was she saw a woman outside in the trees that was pale with a white dress and long black hair, and that was the same woman that I saw for years.
Whoa.
And that was back when she was a little kid. So.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it's really been around for quite a bit.
Yeah.
Interesting. Did your mom have any thoughts on who that might be?
No, she thought maybe it was her mom. She was adopted when she was little, so she doesn't know anything about her family.
Mm-hmm.
And she kind of hoped it was maybe her mom looking after her or something like that. But from my experiences with her, it's probably not anything good like that.
Right. You were getting negative feelings from this situation.
Oh, yeah. I think she liked scaring me.
Why do you think that? What makes you think that?
Well, because, a lot of when I would see other stuff, it would mostly be I would see, wispy people, kind of going about their business or, standing on the side of the road, not really noticing me, kind of just there. Mm-hmm. But this lady, she would always creep at right at the edge of your vision, and she'd always be in these weird contorted angles, and she liked to mess with me in the shower really bad. When I would be in the shower, she would push on the shower curtain, and you would see a pale hand pushing on the shower curtain.
Oh yeah, that's not nice.
Yeah. And I have long hair. I've always had long hair. So when I got out of the shower, I would bend over, I would flip to wrap my towel around my head, and I would see pale legs standing behind me. Yeah.
And you always knew that it would be this one entity? You could just tell?
Yeah. Yeah, it's you got this feeling whenever she was around, this pit in your stomach, this dread. So.
Did your mom say that she had that feeling at all? I mean, even though she said it was her mother, was there ever anxiety attached to this entity with your mother, or was it a different thing?
No, it was never any issue. When she saw it, when she was little, she ran up to her foster mom and said, "Hey, your friend's outside. She wants to come inside." So she never had any bad feelings.
Interesting. I wonder why it changed for you.
I don't know. But I do know that when I got a little older, I always tried to just block it out. That was kind of my coping mechanism. Just pretend like it's not there. Mm-hmm. Try not to stir it up. But I met this lady. She was into ghost hunting and tarot cards and all that. And she suggested that I do a sage cleansing.
Okay.
Yeah.
How'd that work
out? I was scared to do it. But later on that day, I saw in the mirror there was this man. He looked Native American, but it not in like tribal era kind of deal. It was more like he had a white button-up shirt and wire framed glasses. But he had the biggest smile on his face, the most loving and just happy smile.
Okay.
And that was the first positive thing I've seen in decades. So I took that as a good sign, and I did it. And immediately felt like this weight was lifted off of me. And
That's good.
that lady was gone.
That was it.
Straight
no
away.
more. And she never came back?
No. Not that I know of. Anyway.
Well, at least she's not messing with you in the shower anymore. You're
Yeah,
free
she's
of
not messing with me because, yeah,
Good to know sage
it
works.
used to be an everyday thing, and it was immediately gone.
Wow.
And then I ended up finding my faith again
Oh wow.
because I lost it after all that stuff happened with my dad, and
Yeah. Yeah, that's got to be tough. I can't imagine.
yeah, I fell away
Especially
from
at such
it.
a young
And
age.
ever since I found my faith again, I've never encountered a negative spirit ever since.
Incredible. I love to hear it. Well, I appreciate you calling in tonight and letting us know about this wild story. And I'm gonna look at mirrors differently.
Oh yeah, don't say Bloody Mary 3 times.
Oh, I'm never saying Bloody Mary.
Did you ever do that?
I just did. I just said it twice.
Stop saying it. No, you have to be looking in a mirror though.
Well, thank you so much for calling in.
Thanks, Carrie.
I think we have one more.
No problem. I'm glad I got the chance to share. So.
Yeah.
Do we? John?
Have a good night.
Oh, is it John?
I think we have one more. Yeah.
Okay, let me see.
Hey guys, we got one more.
John,
John, you there?
are you with us?
It's just an apparition.
I-
The last call is just
He's like
an empty room.
out of here.
Yeah. Well, John, if you can hear us, we'd love to hear
Yes,
your
yes.
story. Hey.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All
How are
right,
you,
awesome.
sir?
No, I really
Thanks.
appreciate y'all giving me a chance to squeeze on in here at the end.
Yeah, thanks for waiting around.
So,
What do you got? What
nah,
what
no,
is
well, it's a really good show. I mean, so far
Thanks,
it's pretty
man.
good.
I appreciate it. Well,
Well,
tell us what's
I'm
up.
40 years old. I've pretty much had experiences my entire life, as far as I can remember. Pretty much something Kat was touching on that kind of hit home. I kind of had that feeling. So I've been told that I'm a haunted individual. I've been told that I could be somewhat of an empath, that I can feel certain things.
Okay.
And I've had a lot of things attach themselves to me.
Interesting.
So
Have you been told this your whole life, like since you were a kid? Like when people say, "Hey, you're
pretty
haunted."
much just random people,
Oh,
just
geez.
like telling me. Yeah. It's been
Yeah.
almost a daily occurrence where like you kind of feel something or you see something, and the crazy part about it is, if you're there with me, you're going to experience it also.
Wow. It's always been that way.
Yeah, it's not just me. It just doesn't happen to me. It happens to past girlfriends. It happens to friends. Pretty much whoever's around.
But it's happening to them only when they're with you.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So tell
So
us
that's why I'm
more.
told that you're haunted.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know, I've had crazy stories. The one thing I really talk about the most is my house. I lived in a house for 7 years, and it was basically a haunted house. So I bought this house brand new in 2016 in July. I moved in, and I can tell you that immediately I started to experience things.
What happened?
So the night that I fell asleep, the first night that I moved in, and you could hear voices in another room. And it sounded like just gibberish, a couple of old people just kind of talking back and forth. And I'm listening to it, and I'm like, is that the neighbors? What the hell is this? So I get up, and I look at, in the general direction, and you can hear someone just say, shh, he can hear us.
Oh man.
And then it starts going back and forth with a little bit of a banter. So I get up, I'm freaked out, and I turn on all the lights, to the whole house, and there's nobody there. So it takes me a while to go back to sleep, and I think, maybe it's just the neighbors or something. When I wake up later that day, it's the sun is out, but I'm like in this kind of paralyzed sleep where it's like you're still kind of asleep, half asleep. You can hear stuff going on around you. Mm-hmm. And I could hear what sounded like it sounded like a lady in heels that was walking from one side of my bed to the other. And it would stop and it would look at me, and then it would just kind of keep walking back and forth. So it did that for a few minutes till I finally woke up. And in Mexican culture, they say that that could be the hooves of like the devil.
Oh, wow.
Oh, jeez.
So it's not really a heels that you hear. It's like hooves.
The clicking of hooves.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
So that it was always things like that.
Did you see the body at all? Like, were you able to look at it at all?
So you would see things out of the corner of your eyes, and people would come to my house and they would see the same thing.
Crazy.
To the point where like something was running at you. Like I remember, bending over to tie my shoelace one time, getting ready for work, and it's like something kind of peeked around the corner, was looking at me, and then came running at me full sprint, and then it just caused you to fall back. Wow. And you're just looking like, what the hell?
Do you know if you're the first person in your family to be haunted like this? To be a haunted person?
As far as I know, yes.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of my friends, you'll catch them kind of looking around, and you're like, hey, what's up? And they'll be like, oh, nothing. They don't want to talk about it. They're like, you could tell by their face that they've seen something. A lot of them don't want to talk about it. Some of them will. I had a past girlfriend of mine. Basically, she came over to the house one night, and as soon as she got up there, she called me. She said, I'm here at the house. Let me in. I go to answer the door, and she's like, haha, very funny. You were flashing this light at me. And I was like, well, what light are you talking about? She's like, yeah, from the front window, you were flashing a light at me. I said, no, I was in the other side of the house, folding laundry. So,
oh boy.
He just says, interesting. So, I believe that there was some kind of a portal in the first bedroom of the house.
Can you tell us more about the portal? Why do you think that?
Yeah.
You're like,
well, so she saw that light, and then 2 weeks later, I forgot all about it. And then I came home and I saw it.
And
I saw what looked like it was a flashing light going through the blinds, and I thought somebody was in my house trying to break in. So
let me ask real quick. The flashing light, is it like a small flashlight, or is it like a flash photography kind of flash? Is it a big light, smaller light?
Flash photography. It's like blinding.
Okay, so it's like a big, and it's like once. Is it once, or is it blinking a bunch?
It's blinking kind of like a strobe, but it's random.
Whoa. So think
then
portal.
I come running around the corner. Say again?
I'm sorry. No, keep going.
Oh, yeah. So I come running around the corner. I open up the door. I'm ready to confront this thing. I think it's somebody burglaring my house, right? And I slam open the door. I turn on the lights, and then I try turning on the light to the room, but that light won't work. And then I pull out my phone to think, record this. What the hell's going on? And my phone's dead. So then my phone's dead. This thing's just flashing in the middle of my room, and it's basically a big orb.
Still going on. So after all of that,
it's flickering, and it's floating around, and I'm just freaking out. And I'm like, "What the hell is this?" So, I was told like you got to kind of cuss at it and scream at it. So I was cussing at it. I was screaming at it. I was like, "This is my house. You need to get the hell out of here." And I just remember going to reach to grab it, and it started flashing so violently that it blinded me, and then it disappeared right when I was about to touch it.
Wow.
Dang.
And it blinded me for a little bit. I stumbled out of the house, just kind of regained myself, went back in there, and the light was working. So
did you see it again?
It was just something. So that particular orb, I had an ex of mine. She saw it. She saw it in the laundry room. It was just kind of floating around. And on my actual, I got like a little YouTube channel. It's just, I got like 19 views, but there's the orb there.
Okay.
And you can see it on the outside of the house, and it's trying to make its way in.
You want to tell people how they can find that?
And just my name. I guess just look up John Judd. And you know what? I had put a crucifix up in the attic, and then I felt like because the crucifix was there, I couldn't get in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
so that was kind of crazy.
Did it stop altogether? Are you still in that house?
No, I ended up selling the house in October, but up until the last day, I was still experiencing things. It was kind of like a mischievous spirit. So, my ex also said that she had seen a boy. One time she opened up her eyes and there was a boy standing there watching her sleeping.
Jeez.
And it kind of looked like a little kid that was running around like a little shadow or something. And he would take things, you would put something somewhere, and then he would take it, or it would take it, and then you wouldn't find it for a couple days, or like a couple weeks, and then it would come back in the same spot that you had put it.
Mischievous ghosts are the worst.
Oh no!
It's like my memory is my memory failing, or am I just getting messed with? It's the worst. So I was gonna ask. Oh yeah, keep going.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, sorry, I was gonna ask. I know you said you're a haunted person. You sold the house.
Yeah.
These things are still happening to you to some degree at the new place, wherever you are.
Oh yeah. I've always experienced stuff. I don't really look like the last caller was talking about mirrors.
Mm-hmm.
I don't look into mirrors unless I have to. Like if I'm in a restroom, I'm gonna close the door behind me because I don't want to see something in the corner of my eye.
Wow. Was
so
there
always something?
Was there a mirror in that room? Was there a mirror in that room with the portal?
No, that room did not have a portal, but I think there's something with light. So there's a fiber optics that I had basically from AT&T. It's the optical network terminal. It's like a little white box where the fiber optics came in. And at first, I was trying to rationalize, but of course it's not that kind of a light. It's like an infrared type of light, but I think maybe that fiber optics kind of, there's like, you're messing with light. So maybe they're messing with the portal. I don't know.
It's like what we were saying earlier. I do believe that electricity has enabled certain things to communicate with us.
It's happening now.
It's happening right now. I don't know if that's on John's side or our side. I mean, we do have a haunted guest right now speaking to us. So I was anticipating something.
Looking for something to fall.
I was anticipating something to reach through the screen.
Yeah.
But hey, John, thanks for calling in. We appreciate the stories.
Thanks, John.
No worries. Thank you, and have a good one.
Thanks, you too. Wow. Another fun episode. Guys, thank you so much for calling in. I'd like to thank Christopher for being our guest today. Please check him out at Fences Music on Instagram and check out his album Bright Soil. His music videos are really cool, especially the newest ones, like the song No One. They're a lot of fun. So thank you all for tuning in. Thanks for joining us. That house story from John reminded me that when we bought our first house in New York, my wife and I spent the night alone there. Our kids stayed with my parents, they weren't too far away. And it was an old house from the 1850s. Yeah. And I was a little like, it's a new old house. I grew up in a house from the 1700s. So the 1850s house was actually like a modern house for me. But our first night there, my wife and I, we only had an air mattress. We're sleeping on it. We're about to sleep. All of a sudden, the worst scream starts happening outside the house. We were on like 2 acres, and it was totally dark outside. This is like in the country up, in New York. I'm like, I don't know what that scream is. And I'm from the country. Like I grew up on a farm. I've heard most weird noises. We've had the house surrounded by crazy, I was gonna say hyenas. I'm thinking about Kenya, by coyotes. And I look outside, and right there in the front yard is just a fox screaming. I had never heard the fox that close, and they scream like banshees. Yeah. And I never saw the fox again. It was just the first night. He just had to show up and be like, I'm not going to do it. I don't want to scream in everyone's ears right now, but it's a horrifying sound. But man, Alex, where can they find you online?
You can find me on X at I am Alex Ayala.
Awesome.
That's about it.
Alex, thanks for tonight.
It's been real.
Not as many ghosts as last time, but still some.
I still feel haunted. I cried a little.
You did cry a little. You cried a little.
Don't tell anybody.
Next time will be me. I'm surprised I didn't cry during the Beach Boys talking, because they do me. You can find me at Shane Cashman everywhere. You can find the show at Inverted Tales on all the social media places. Again, if you want to submit stories to be a caller, hit me up at shanecashman@scnr.com. Please like, subscribe, share this with everybody. Love to hear all the stories you all have. I can't wait to go through all these others I have for next week. We will be back next Sunday, 6 p.m. Eastern time. We will see you guys then. Thank you all for tuning in.